mine.
Good evening, everybody. We will call the December 6th Wright County Board meeting to order. This is the Truth in Taxation, and there's other names for it. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming, taking away from their busy schedules. It's unfortunate we have to meet under these circumstances, but we are always open for you to stop and visit us during our regular board meetings. Those of you that are unaware of it, we do live stream our board meetings, and you can also find it on the county website at any time you want. This meeting also is being streamed live, and you'll also be able to go back and look at these meetings tonight at any time afterwards. My name is Mark DeLeiden. I'm the chair this year, and Commissioner District 3, which represents Eastern St. Michael, Olivet, Segal, and a very small part of Dayton that resides in Wright County. One of the things I want to mention, and we'll do introductions here in a second, is that, and I can speak for the board here, is that none of us like the way property taxes are set. It is the most unfair tax that is out there, but it's the only tool legislators have given us to work with. And more will be coming about that as we go through the 2019 budget. But so you're aware of it, none of us like the situation that we are in either. Our vice chair.
My name is Derek Fetch. I represent District 2. I represent Clearwater Township, Silver Creek, Maple Lake Township, Monticello, and Monticello Township. I'll be going through later on the slides is talking you through our budget presentation.
My name is Michael Potter, District 4, which is Altville, the western portion of St. Michael, Hanover, Rockford, and Rockford Township.
My name is Charlie Burrell. I'm from Waverly, Minnesota. We're actually in Woodland Township, and I represent District 5, which is kind of the whole southern part of the county, the cities of Delano, Montrose, Waverly, Howard Lake, and Cokato, and the townships of Franklin, Woodland, Marysville, Middleville, Victor, Stockholm, Cokato, and French Lake. So
You didn't miss any this time.
didn't mention what?
You didn't miss any this time, Charlie.
That's the one.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I'm Christine Hewson, District 1, so I have the cities of Buffalo, Annandale, South Haven, and the townships of Buffalo, Chatham, Albion, Corinna, and Southside. Did I miss one?
Deb, would you introduce yourself?
I'm Deb Schreiner, Administrative Specialist.
Deb will be taking minutes, and the other gentleman sitting next to her is our county coordinator, who will be introducing himself in just a second. I want to give you a few guidelines for tonight. We intend on going through the a PowerPoint regarding the budget, how we got to where we're at, the way things are set. We want everybody to have the opportunity to give their comments if they want. We ask that you would limit it to 3 minutes so everybody has an opportunity to speak. You're more than welcome to speak in a second time after everybody else has had a chance to speak for once. And then the other thing is that we are going to possibly take some breaks. There's a lot of people here. We want everybody to be able to have an opportunity to talk. Deb's fingers will wear out. So when you do come up to the podium, please state your name and your address, the city that you live in, so that it can be kept in the minutes. And again, if you haven't signed in, please do so. And again, we will have a few more of the PowerPoint presentations for you to take home with you if you want. They're being printed right now. Lee, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, my name's Lee Kelly. I'm the county coordinator. I'll give kind of a brief kickoff to this. As you know, that this year we've tried to, due to our budget, get more information out there. We've put out several documents, PowerPoints regarding our 2019 budget. We've kind of tried to tailor tonight's presentation based on the questions and comments we've received since the statements have been mailed out. So hopefully we cover it in good enough detail. If you have any questions, it'd be a good time to ask. So first off, and I'll see if you can see just kind of showing the highlights of the budget process. This is really an entire year process, and this slide kind of shows the highlights of the main checkpoints, if you will, of it. We start actually back February, March, and April gathering CIP or capital improvement plan projects. Through a series of meetings, we then develop a draft of the capital improvement plan. Next milestone after that, we always gather the information, populate various pre-approved columns that we know are expenses we will have for the upcoming budget, and then get those workbooks out to our department heads to complete their annual budgets.
Talk a little louder.
My apologies. Let me move my mic here. Is that a little better? Does that work? All right, sorry about that. So as I mentioned, July 13th, we had our budget workbooks were submitted from the department heads to administration, which was then presented to the County Board of Commissioners. What we do with that process is all the department heads come in front of the board, talk to the things that are impacting their budgets or proposed budgets, and the board reviews those. Oftentimes we go line by line on those. Following that, the next major milestone, we have to adopt a preliminary budget prior to September 30th. This year we did it in the middle of September, adopted the preliminary budget and levy. And here we find ourselves tonight, December 6th. This is one of the final major milestones of our annual budget process, this public meeting. We are required to hold this annually, 6 p.m. or later. And again, the purpose of this meeting is to get input, comment, opportunity for the public to ask questions. So the final last pieces is that we will have to adopt a final budget prior to December 30th and send it off to the State Department of Revenue. So I see Commissioner Potter has his budget book in his hands.
Looks like this. And it has all the different departments tabbed in there. They all have their issues and items and what they're asking and everything else in here with a narrative at the front of it.
It's all on our website also.
Yeah.
So again, tonight's meeting is to talk about our 2019 budget. If you have questions regarding your individual valuation or classification of individual properties, we do have the assessor staff here tonight to help assist with those questions if you'd like to meet with them. With that, I'll turn it over to our county assessor, Tony Rasmussen, to give kind of an overview of the individual property assessment process. Yep.
I'm Tony Rasmussen, County Assessor. And
Tony, better speak into the mic.
is it working?
You gotta face it.
Talk to you about-
You gotta face the mic.
My audience is there.
I know, it's a bad situation.
Okay, I'm going to be talking into the mic, so. Try.
Yeah. Will he still be on camera?
Yeah, now it'll be the back of my head to the camera?
That's all right.
Okay,
Throw another one out if you want to go this way.
all right.
We'll see your bald spot, Tony, in the camera. Don't worry about it.
Okay, that's fine. What I'm about to talk to you about, I couldn't make this stuff up. This is actually how the assessment works. If you take a look at this blue area, we have a sales ratio analysis that we go through on an annual basis. For this particular year, the ratios were analyzed from October 1st of 2016 through September 30th of 2017. Those ratios are analyzed, and we will take the information that we gather and develop tables out of those ratios. When property is selling for more than assessed value, we're going to be raising those values up. When it's selling for below assessed value, we'd be taking those values down. You probably experienced that over the course of your time owning property in Wright County in the last 10 years or so. We have a range that we have to be within of 90 to 105%. That's considered acceptable to state standards. Property valuation and classification can be appealed in the spring of the year. So at this point, everything has been appealed. We had 169 appeals from April through June of last year. And after the County Board of Equalization, we are then certified with those values. The only way that a value can get changed is in Minnesota Tax Court, and you have up until April 30th of 2019 to appeal at the tax court level. So at this point, we're looking at those values being certified, tax capacities calculated, and the taxes are then apportioned to all the property owners for the levies that are going to be created for 2019, which is what is occurring here. So that's about all I have. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the assessment process. Lee did talk about our assessors being here if anyone had questions in regards to value. But that boat has pretty much sailed. This meeting is about the levy. Any questions? Yes.
So if you have an issue with the value, is it like a moot point at this time?
We do have people here, and the only way we would be looking at changing value, those meetings take place in April through June. That's indicated on your notification of value. The only way we'd be changing value right now would be if there were a clerical error. Otherwise, it would have to take place in Minnesota Tax Court. A petition have to be filed. No, those notices went out in late March, and that appeal period goes from April through June.
What would you have received?
A notification of valuation and classification. Yep.
The problem with that is it doesn't show.
That's correct, because that's what they're doing now.
Why don't they have?
All we're really doing is creating the tax capacity pie. That's what our job is. And our job is to make sure that we're valuing that property at market value and classifying it according to its use.
So it's more in line. We're not chasing the bullet.
Unfortunately, that's the way it's set up. When you look at this, that is the way it is set up. And there is a method behind the madness. It's giving you an ability to appeal your value. If you have an idea that your property is overvalued, that is when you want to appeal that.
So we could appeal it next year still.
We're currently working on the 2019 assessment, so what you're looking at here, yes. We're working on the January 2nd, 2019 assessment. So that is something that you can contact our office about that too.
So Tony, why would we go to talk to somebody this evening?
This is about the levy. This is about the money that's going to be getting spent, the budget.
Was there a meeting like this when we got that first public meeting, when we got that first notice?
Individual appointments.
No,
Now after it takes place.
so when we're talking about the value, we're talking about tax capacity. I look at it as a pie, okay? We've got 61,000 taxable parcels in the county. Everyone has their piece of the pie. That's our job, coming up with that tax capacity. They generate the levy, you know, at the county level, the school level, and at the city or township level. And that is saying what part of that tax you'll be
So when we
paying.
got the first one, was there just like a little line on there that said if you disagree with this, you got April or whatever? Is that the
Yes.
only way we knew?
To appeal your value?
Yeah.
Yes, correct. You get a notification of value every year.
How do you figure the percentage when you get the statement in February, March, whatever, and now your taxes come, I mean, you get your value, but you don't know how much your taxes are gonna go up,
And-
percentage-wise.
Correct, and I don't either.
Now, I mean, for years back, they go up 10%. This year, you get a tax statement that's got 27%.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, from our standpoint, what we're dealing with is the value. The assessor is dealing with the value. We have no idea what is going to be happening with the levy at that point in time.
Some of these questions will get answered as we go through the process. So, the only,
Mark, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but in the spirit of transparency, there is one thing I can think that could help this issue for the residents of Wright County, and that's a what-if tool. And given whatever the current assessed value is, it'd be nice to have a what-if tool to be able to plug in what that number is on those assessments, and then given the current, you don't know what the tax levies are going to be, but for people to be able to plug that in to see how much impact that might have on their taxes.
You can do that on,
yeah, in the, well,
you could put a fictitious, you could put whatever number you want in there, that, you could be an
Yeah, anybody can do
interactive
that.
piece.
Again, in the spirit of transparency.
yeah, and
We have the
going
deadline.
forward, we'll have that opportunity here in the future. But anyway,
Isn't this backward? Can you do it just the reverse?
no, this is the way the state requires us to do it.
To help the citizens of Minnesota.
our hands back there, and everybody
It would
else
be
was
better
talking,
for
just,
reverse.
you know.
Well, we have to, the problem is, we have to set the values before we can set a levy.
It's with this,
That's how the state requires us.
Well, I realize that.
Then you need to talk to the state legislators. There's nothing we can do about that. This is what we have.
The next slide I'm gonna walk you through.
let's go through.
All right, so yeah, let's go through the next slide, which will help us maybe get a handle on why we do what we do.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Doesn't mean the answer is that you get the real estate value, and that's how much money you have. And then you come along and say, our budget is A, but the real estate value doesn't take it, so the levy is going to be B.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'm gonna walk you through this whole equation.
Yep.
And I want to go back to Mr. Potter's comment.
Which one?
So you give guidance to your departments. Do you give them a cap? Do they start with zero-based budgeting? Do you tell them they can only raise it 5%? I mean, what guidance do you give the departments? Do they come in and say, here's what we want everything? How do you temper their taste?
Most all our department heads know better than to just let it all hang out. But that, we don't have any tool like that in there. And the other thing I want to clear before you get there, you always collect your taxes of value 1 year in arrears. So last spring, or the value, that was the set one, now that's come here. So the next spring, when you get that same notice that says notice of valuation, you can appeal it to your local level. If you don't like it, you can keep coming up through the thing there. It's always 1 year in arrears. That's how you got your value first before you get the tax thing coming at you.
But the levy is the difference between what your real estate gives you and what you want to spend.
And the levy is only half of the budget.
I don't care how much it is, it's the difference between what you're going to get from real estate and what you want, what your budget wants to spend. That's how you determine the levy.
He'll walk through it and hopefully you'll get the understanding of how this works.
Bob, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Bob Hevel. I'm the auditor treasurer here. The next couple slides, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of taxation 101. Tony talked about the assessment. I'm going to briefly talk about the whole budget for the county, but then we're going to go into deeper slides to say what were the pressures on the budget? Why is it up so much. So this is great that you're asking these questions. So Tony just got done telling you the assessor's job is to value your property and classify it. And when he's all done, now that's including commercial, ag, and residential and seasonal rec property. When he's done, it works with our office and we determine what the capacity is. So the property value and the classification of your property, the state has a classification rate. So we take that rate times his value and we determine out what your individual capacity is. Then we add all the capacities from all the residential, seasonal rec, ag, and commercial properties. That's the total capacity of the county to levy taxes on. We take our individual levy, and that's what tonight is about. Tonight is all about our operating budget, less our revenues that we're going to take in to get down to what we need for a levy to balance our budget. We take the levy, we divide by that total tax capacity, we come up with a tax rate. We all pay the exact same tax rate. It's just what our taxes is based off of our individual values and classifications. So that's a very simplistic way to do it, but that's as unequal or unfair as our tax system is. We all pay the same tax rate. So there's 14 reasons. We boiled it down to this. There's a whole YouTube video that we had before to explain why your taxes would change from one year to the next. There's 14 reasons why. But the biggest thing is your market value. Commissioner Potter said it's okay to walk you through his individual property tax statement. I'm going to show you. He had an increase in his market value. That has an impact on his taxes. The city budget, the township, the school budgets, the special assessments, all those get added onto it. So I'll walk you through the tax statement. You'll see that you had the county, you had the city, you had the township, or there's other districts. I'm going to walk you through that. If your school voted a referendum in, and if there's a shift from state or federal mandates, which I think we're going to touch base on tonight. Yep.
I'm sorry, no disrespect at all. Could you introduce who you are?
I'm sorry, I'm Bob Hevela, the auditor treasurer. So, we'll touch base.
Are you guys having trouble hearing him?
Yeah, you want me to talk clearer into this? All right. And then it goes, changes to our grants that we get from the federal and the state agencies, and then the legislative changes, what they want, the mandates that they ask us to do. So we felt that it would be more pertinent to you to walk through an actual statement versus the sample statement that we have. So this is Commissioner Betch's personal property tax. On the right is, you can see that his taxable value went from 224 to 240. So that was, yeah.
It should be in the handout.
But if you have your statements, you can look. It's right up here. So he had a 7% increase in his taxable value. So remember I said one of the reasons why you pay more in taxes, if your value goes up, that could have an impact and you pay more taxes. Well, that's this taxable value. Now he has homestead, so he has an exclusion. So
Based on
Tony,
sales, though. It's based on sales.
Well, the homestead exclusion is based on the numbers that's set by the state, and it actually is a sliding scale based on the increased value of your home. The more your home value increases, the less homestead credits you get. And there's also, and that's a moving number based on the legislator that they have available for you to have for homestead exclusions. I'm sorry.
hopefully it's clear in your handouts, but
Is there a cap? The
Like-
percentage,
on the homestead,
yeah.
Jamie,
You cap it?
is there a cap on homestead exclusion?
On the
No,
exclusion?
let's say you come in and you got a $300,000 house, you didn't do any improvements, you come in and go, well, now your house is worth $400,000 over.
You've got it too.
This is what they
Be an assessor question.
There is no cap.
So you can put whatever you want on it.
We value according to what it would sell for in the open market. Correct. No.
So maybe backstepping.
Question on that,
Yep.
'cause this is mine, is where I really have a budget. Mine went up almost $100,000 with no improvement, so that's just insane. Do you take into account that you also decided arbitrarily, FEMA did, that I now, even though I'm in the same house, same place, now live in a floodplain, and now I'm paying $3,000 a year in flood insurance? That seriously impacts the value of my house, because anybody coming in is going to look at that. Is that taken into account?
If you've got questions about value, we do have people here for you to talk to. This is about the levy. We do have people in our office to talk about value if you'd like to do that.
Okay, so that we can try and solve some of these questions, who here has specific questions on the value of their property? Please raise your hand. Okay, those people that have risen their hands, raise their hands. Do you also want to find out more about the budget part of it, or your biggest concern is about the valuation of your property?
Valuation.
Okay.
Both, okay.
All right, okay, what I'm trying to do is we'll end up being here till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning if we take all this. So what I'm trying to do is that if those that have major issues with their valuations, that maybe Tony could take, or some of the other assessors can go, take you over to their office and work with you on a one-to-one basis to try and answer those questions. Otherwise, right now, tonight is regarding the budget, and we need to focus on that part of it. So if you want to talk to somebody regarding the value of your property, regardless of the taxes, step outside and one of the assessors will work with you on that. And again, all we can change tonight on your assessed value is if there's a clerical error, meaning that Tony screwed up.
Can the levy be changed?
The levy can always be changed, yet. The levy can go down. We cannot raise it. It can go down. That's why we're having this here tonight. And that's why we want to go through this presentation to let people know why it is what it is. There's reasoning behind it. We're all taxpayers up here too. We don't like it any more than anybody else does. But again, this is the avenue the state gives us. They don't give us any other way to raise funds. We have no control over what they say is the value of your property for the homestead. They change that. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't have any control over that. So we're just trying to get through the reason it is what it is this time, and so that we can hear everybody. If you want us to cut it, you tell us what you want us to take out, and we'll see if that's possible. Remember, 85% of the things we do are state mandated, so we don't have a choice.
I want everybody to know, even if you want to stay and hear the presentation, please do. And because Tony will be available tomorrow, the next week, the following week, his staff, don't feel that you have to go tonight to get your valuation questions answered. I think it's important that you see the presentation and at least understand how the budget's being spent. Those questions can still get answered the next couple days. The biggest thing that we want to say is right now we want to concentrate on the budget aspect, because right now we can't answer those valuation questions.
So if I wrap up, on your statement, right about there is what you're watching from Tony. Tony's going to say what your value of your property is and what the classification is. So when you get your statement in the spring, that's what he's saying is going to be taxable for pay 20.
The preliminary or the
So, right here is on the next slide.
Oh, yeah.
When you're looking at your tax statement, you're going to see all the, oh, I have it. So right here, you have the county, you have the city, you have the school district, and you have the Monticello HRA. On your statement, you're going to have your respective county, city, township, school districts, and so like that. So here, Derek's taxes went up. Now, Derek's taxes went up partially because his value went up. The other part is that our county tax rate went up. When we took our levy divided by our total capacity, our rate did go up. So that's how you'd read it. And then we're not here to really talk about the city of Monticello's levy or the schools or the HRAs. Today is all about the county's budget.
Why did the levy divided by the capacity?
Well, we did have an increase in the question is, why did our tax rate go up? our base, our tax capacity went up quite a bit, but our levy went up. So our levy that we need divided by our capacity, that ratio is higher than it was last year. So tonight, and we're going to get into the details of what drove this budget, but overall, our operating budget is $147,090,953. 47 million minus our operating revenues, our grants and others in-kind revenues gets down to a 73,524,014 levy, which is 17.3% increase over last year's levy. Our overall.
Can we see what makes up the 73 million?
We're going to get to that.
Yes, we'll be getting to that.
We're going to walk through that. Our tax capacity, this was your question, our tax capacity increased by 7.17%, and that's a pretty big number. So the 17.3% increase in our levy doesn't mean that you're paying 17.3% more. There's all those other variables that came into play here. Tax capacity growth, remember the value of your property, the classification of your property, all that jumbled together.
New properties.
Times the state's tax rate for your classification. Add them all together, that's our capacity for the county. So we had more growth, so we had a larger tax capacity. This is our operating budget. And we're depicting it this way to show you that there's functions of government that we do. We do public safety, we do highways, we do health and human services, we have culture and recreation, we have highway construction. That's how we break our operating budget down. We're going to go into details of what composed that. How that money is spent, now this is the kind of like the classification of those expenses. So we spend 49% of our budget on personnel. We spend 18% on capital outlay. 7% of our operating budget is debt service. So that's how we spend it. And this, remember I said our operating budget minus our revenues? This shows you that 50% of our budget comes from property taxes. That's pretty representative of all of our past years. We average right around 48 to 52% of our operating budget comes from property tax. This year is no different. We have charges for services, and again, we get a lot of state and federal grants to help offset our operating expenses. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of open this over to the commissioners to help you walk through. This is our levy increase, and what comprised our levy increase? Or is there any questions for me before I hand it over to the commissioners?
Just one, Bob.
He's going to bring it up here to
We had
me.
a $147 million budget. What was it last year?
128.
128 million. Yep.
I got a question.
Yep.
You know, because they keep talking about property values and the tax capacity and all that.
Yep.
If the property tax goes up 100%, that's kind of, it doesn't equal like how much your income went up or any of that stuff. My county tax goes up 25%. I mean, to be more granular, if you're looking at GDP percent growth or inflation versus a calculation of property value.
I wholeheartedly
Actually show, you know, us what's actually taking place.
There are so many individual oddities that we can walk through, but this is the formula that the state has for us. We value the property, we classify it. The state has a classification rate for seasonal residential, ag, based on the value of it. So that's the process that we go through right now. If there's an alternative way, we need to lobby for that.
Well, I mean, you can obviously do it where you have to, but you can also do like an additional, you know, transparency kind of thing. Here's what GDP went up in the county, and here's what our tax rate is going up as a percent of that.
Are you going to talk about inflation?
Yes, I will address that option just so you understand it. I actually have that as part of the next slides. I will talk about that piece to it.
'Cause I mean, if everybody's property tax goes up 13%, and the taxes stay the same, our taxes should stay the same. You know, like the tax rate stays the same, or the dollar amount, I mean. The property goes up 13%. Everybody's goes up 13%. My dollar amount should stay the same.
Not everybody's properties goes up the same, so, but anyway, let us continue with this, please. I mean, part of the issue is by having you all talk out here, is that information is not being recorded properly because you can't hear.
I got 4 kids, so I gotta leave at 7, so that's what I was trying to get in.
I understand, but I'm just trying to get everybody an opportunity here.
So I'll try to repeat the question. What is your question, sir?
Just a quick question, can you back up a slide, please?
Sure.
The contribution from the state, does that change year to year, or how did it change from
That'd be under
18
revenues.
to 19 of contributions from the state?
Right. The contribution from the state, are you talking about the county program aid?
Well, you had a slide on how it's spent.
There'd be the revenue. The state money would be coming as a revenue. So go to the revenue slide, and you basically look at state category, state general purpose aid, that's,
The state categorical aid is a lot of our county program aid.
Yeah, I just, so those bottom 3 on the left, does it change from year to year? Does it go from 15 to 16, 15 to 13?
It does change some. I don't have that number right now with you, but it does change some. Our grants are fairly steady. Our county program aid, when the state had their deficit, they kind of played with that. They took it away from us, then they kind of gave it back to us over time. Yep. So the commissioners are going to go more into deep. Oh, Mr. Wetter.
Leander Wetter, on the residential homestead, there are 2 line items I'd like. Tax capacity of the first 500,000 and tax capacity over 500,000. Could you explain that?
Tammy, you want to explain that? Tammy Wright is my tax administrator in my office.
So you're looking at the residential, is that the line? So any property that is valued at 500,000 or less is going to be, in order to calculate the tax capacity for that, you will take that value multiplied by 1%. Any property that is valued over 500,000, residential property, is going to be, that value will be multiplied by, is it 1.25? We don't have very many, well, I don't deal with very many, 1.25% to determine that capacity. Again, it's that capacity that I take as a whole county to determine, like Tony explained earlier, the entire pie, but then within that pie, your capacity, your taxable market value minus that class rate is what then is used against the county tax rate, the school district tax rate, city or township tax rate to determine your actual tax. That help, and those rates and those tiers that you're looking at, that is all set by the state of Minnesota.
I understand that.
Yep, so Minnesota has one of the most complicated tax systems, unfortunately, or tax processes, that it makes it very difficult for a lot of us to try and explain. Part of that complication are all of those classifications, all those different classifications and all the exceptions to the rules that legislatures put in place for us to try and implement. So we're definitely here for questions, but it is complicated.
Well, if it's complicated, it seems like none of you agree with or you have a problem with how the state manages the adjustment. If I had a problem doing my job, wouldn't it make sense for me to go to my boss and say, hey, maybe there's a better way to... Has anybody thought of...
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Constantly. In fact, we'll be meeting with our legislators tomorrow regarding one of these concerns we have. So it's not just Wright County that has this problem. Every county in Minnesota has the same issue. But unfortunately, our bosses, just like your bosses, don't always listen to us. Does anybody else have any more questions, or can we continue with the slide presentation?
all right.
Go forward.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come out here tonight. We are here to have a serious discussion over a serious matter, how we spend your tax dollars. I've struggled for months here and put endless amounts of time into this presentation with staff and myself and fellow commissioners to give the most transparency we possibly could to you tonight. So I'm going to start off by talking to you about this whole dollar bill here. This whole dollar bill makes up the 17.3% levy. This basically is illustrated in a simpler form, basically putting it into categories. But before I get into that, I want to address an individual's question about parameters for department heads.
You're gonna have to talk a little louder.
Is there the individual one that I can get closer? Because I can't move my mic. Yeah, I can't get it closer to me. And I don't want to hunch over for... Thank you. I want to address a question that an individual back there had about parameters for department heads. It's challenging to put everything to fit inside a box here at the county and say that we want all departments to fit within 2%. Because everything we do here at the county, 90% of it is mandated services. We're actually starting a process here of actually indexing all of the mandated services for the state. And my goal is, by this time next year or prior, is to actually be able to have that available to you, that you will actually be able to look at what we are mandated by the state, how much, or by the federal government, how much of it is funded by the state, how much of it is funded by the federal government, so that you know that for child mental health, if only 6% of it is funded by the state, but they're telling us we have to do it, how much of it is actually coming out of your pocketbook? Because you'd be surprised to find out that majority of the things that we do as a county are all things that we're told to do. We don't have that ability. It's not at a very local level like a township where you can decide to pave a road or not to pave a road. HHS is a huge prime example, as well as our law enforcement. They are filled with mandates of what we have to do. And those mandates drive other mandates that fall into our technology department in as terms of data retention and security, which funnel into administration. So it's hard to put a specific box. So what we do is we put metrics in place. So a lot of our departments actually work within a variety of different metrics that are created for when a car is replaced, when new staff are brought on. So we can't use that simple side. I love the idea of it. I would love to be able to say, you know what, I only want to have a 2% levy, all departments, keep all of your requests under 2%. But unfortunately, I have this year a lot of out-of-home placements, so our increase in out-of-home placement costs line went up by $550,000, over $500,000. So even if I wanted to keep that box at 2%, I don't have that ability, because if I don't meet that mandated service, DHS from the state will do it for us, fine us, and do it for us. So I love the idea on it, but our jobs here at the county are, I'm going to say, complex, to say the least. But going forward, back to the presentation here, I want to go back and show you how this build this levy. So if we're starting from the left-hand side there, you look at used fund balance. Now this is basically practices of using funds from reserves and the need to have to replenish them. We operate as a county where we have to have a certain amount of reserves for operating cash, because when we basically operate all of our funds to a certain level, and we have to have operating cash. So we have to have 6 months, because we won't get our first payment for property taxes till about June, July. So we have to have the fund balance there to do that. So when we operate in a negative balance, we have to replace those funds. So moving to the next slide is our pre-approved wages and benefits. This here is a column that we can't touch as well, because this is pre-negotiated union contracts, this is COLAs, cost of living adjustments, things that are basically tied up. We can't do that without having some sort of legal battle as far as renegotiating their contracts. Moving to the next slide over, you have pre-approved debt service. This one has a little bit more explaining to it. So basically, we took on new debt. Going back in time to about 2002, the courts here, the 10th Judicial Court, had told us that they needed more space. They were operating in inadequate area space. They couldn't function. They kicked the can. We were able to give us some more time. Fast forward to another time till about 2012, where the 10th Judicial Court basically served us a letter stating, you will build us a new building, or we will move our services to another county, and we will bill you for all the time that we have to spend shipping our people over to, say, Washington County or Anoka County. So we really didn't have any option but at that point to build this new building. Hence is the new building that if you drive on 25, that's the new Justice Center that's being built. That right there is your pre-approved debt service. We have to start paying for that bond because we had to build that building. It was really, it's a mandate by the state, essentially, you could say. So now moving to your next one over, you have that $1,046,000. You have staff requests. That is 13.5 new positions that are requested by staff and were vetted out by the process of the commissioners back in August. These
Just let them know that 13.5 are the ones that were approved. There was 27 requests for new employees. So getting back to the one gentleman's question, is that not everything the departments ask for do they receive. We go by mandates and that sort of thing before we make any decisions on who we allow to hire people.
Okay, so if I'm speaking at all too fast, I've had a lot of coffee today, so please let me know if I'm going too fast. I will by all means slow down. But I want to talk about these 13.5 new positions. Majority of them are in law enforcement. There's 5 of them are. 2 of them are actually in our corrections department. And there's a very good backstory to why we're putting these 2 correction agents into our jails, is because right now they are working on having to work mandatory overtime. If you work in a corrections in the jail and you get to the end of your shift and your buddy calls in sick, you don't get to go home. You have to stay until somebody comes to relieve you. And because we have no relief staff, we are that tight on staff over there, it's happening more often than not. And I mean, that actually makes for a very toxic place to work. Nobody wants to work in an environment where you don't know if you're going to get to go home and spend your birthday with your kid tonight because you're hoping that your next shift shows up or it doesn't. So that's building 2 of those staff positions. Another one is our computer forensic. We've been very gracious to have some people work there for us for a very, very long time, and they've been doing it for a very, very affordable levels, but we needed to add more staff. And we can't keep doing it at the rate we're doing it at. And there's a backstory in a lot of these departments, so I'm happy to talk to why I decided for all 13.5 positions.
Introduce Dave, who's been doing this for us for free.
That's very affordable.
So with that being said, I just want to go on to the next one. I'm going to try and not take all night here for you. Moving to the next slide is new debt service. So in the process right now is this building here. This whole area will be vacated in about January of 2020. The courtrooms, the 4th floor will all be empty because the courts and all them will be moving out to this new facility. Now we have to decide, do we stay in this building? Do we not stay in this building? Do we remodel this building? This building here is a complex feature in its own right. If we stay in this building, we can't stay, we've stretched as much as we could. Our bathrooms in this building are not ADA accessible. Our boiler is at its end of life. We've been asking for extensions on a variety of different things that we need to fix. And whether we build a new building, whether we remodel this building, or just leave it the way it is, we have to spend money. And that just leaving it the way it is about $6 million. And that's where this money comes in. We have to put a line item in this budget because we have to have money to fix these things. Whether we use that money towards a bond payment on a new building, whether we use that money to fix the problems in this building, or whether we use it towards debt service to remodel this building, that's where this line item here exists in this budget. Now, moving to the next side is our comp and classification and insurance. Go ahead. You're good.
So the new Justice Center and both of the buildings being kept? Not sure if they're one and the same kind of building?
They're two separate pieces. So the new Justice Center, that's the building that you already see if you drive on 25 that's already being erected. The new, yep, next to the jail. Yep. This new debt service is kind of a placeholder to what we decide as a board, whether it would be to use that money to make repairs in this building, remodel this building, or to vacate this building, sell it, and build a new building and have all county services on one campus. There's kind of one of 3 options. The placeholder is linear at this point. The difference would only be does that placeholder only there for 3 years? Is it there for 10 years? Is it there for 15 years? 20 years? Depends on what option you choose. So, going to the next piece is the, okay. Sure. Sure, if you want to go from there too, if you want to get around there. Absolutely.
You want, maybe?
They have a mic over there, you want to help get that mic down? Is it?
Is it on?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Okay. My name is Christine, and this is Jeffrey, and our last name is Keeler, and we live in Maple Lake. And we just met with the tax guy down there, the assessor. And it's basically, there's nothing you can do, and everything's kind of backwards, like a gentleman was saying before we left. So I came in here to say what he told me to come in here and say, I don't like how you're spending my money. I live on a major county road. You put in a lousy roundabout in Maple Lake. It's the tiniest thing that trucks have to go over. I just feel like we're being penalized because we're disabled. So I don't like how you're spending my money, and I just wanted to be able to say my piece. I've never done anything like this before. We've been through a lot of health stuff, and I haven't been able to come in. So I feel like our taxes are something that someone in Maple Lake or my father in Minnetonka had paid. So my dad, and God rest his soul, and President Bush, who was just buried, they both had the same saying: you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So that's all I ask you to do.
And thank you for coming up and saying those words. I appreciate it. Thank you. So I'll continue on. Going into the comp and classification basically is a process that we've taken on at the county, because if you looked in the paper, followed our website, or even looked on Indeed, we've had at one point this year 19 open positions. We are not competitive in the market. You've heard it in the election for the sheriff, the fact of the high turnover of our deputies. We don't retain it. We are looking at trying to make sure that we are paying an adequate amount. We don't know what that would be. You're guessing. So we put a dollar amount in there to basically correct our pay scale. That's what that would be.
I understand you correctly to say you don't know how much it would take to retain?
I can't definitively say. I can make predictions, and that's what we're doing. We're making predictions. I know it's not a dollar, and I know it's not $5 million. I just kind of we're trying to work through it. We'll get the results of this comp and classification studies in April, and the goal is to hopefully have some level of implementation by July. But it's a long process. This is an 18-month. We started this back in January, and we reevaluated every job description and looked and went through it line by line. And then we are actually going out there and doing comparables and taking over a dozen different counties and looking at what they're paying for all these positions and trying to correlate job descriptions to competitive wage markets to determine whether we are competitive, not competitive, and what we need to do to make sure that we are paying our employees appropriately to retain them and to hire new quality employees.
So have you had a large turnover
Yes, we've had an extremely large amount of turnover.
because of attrition or why?
No, most of it is because of lack of competitive wages to other employers. Our IT department especially is one of our ones that we've been draining. We basically have had a lot of people that have come in, work 2-3 months, and then leave. We've had IT positions that have been open over a year because people just won't take that job at that rate. And it's also in HHS, our public health nurses, our social workers. We have a very, very hard time filling those positions because they can work elsewhere for a higher wage. And that's the same with our deputies on the road. We can't hire deputies because the stringent process that they have to go to become a deputy. You're going to go for the place that pays the best and are going to pay at least decent. If we were at the bottom, you're just not going to get the applicants for the positions, and that's the reason we're entering that process.
With all due respect,
respect, I mean, some of it does come down to work environment, it's not all about the dollar.
Absolutely, you are right. I'm not saying throwing money at it. If you read the paper, my answer to that is straight out there. I do not believe just throwing money at a position, but there's a metrics to it.
And then again, calling forced overtime for the jail people, calling that a toxic work environment.
Well, it could be. I'm not saying it
I
is.
agree with that, because I know from my experience, people are generally really happy to get a lot of overtime.
Yeah, and especially if it's their choice. But if you're forced to have to stay, that's a different answer, a different situation. I mean, if it was your daughter's birthday party that night and you're forced because your fellow coworker didn't come into work that night, these people, even if it's their daughter's birthday, they don't have that ability to go home. That's just because the inmates in there have to be watched, so somebody has to be there. That's just the way the culture of that industry is. But I respect the fact that, yes, a lot of people like to work the overtime. I'm going to keep moving along here. Mr. Chair, do we want to entertain questions as we go along, or do you want to save them for the end? If we're going to start answering questions, we have to get names for the record.
Yeah, I'd rather wait. Let's try and get through this at this point, and then we'll open up for some questions and maybe take a break first and then open up for questions.
Sure. So the other column is basically just COLAs and inflationary increases in different paper costs, small innuendo things throughout the county, and it's a small line item too, but it is real to the budget itself. So moving over, what's driving the budget here is funding of capital improvement process without using reserves. Basically, that's that replenishment of that $1 million of reserves, because in the past we were using turnback dollars, basically dollars that were not spent within the departments would be turned back, and those were used to fund our capital improvements. Well, our capital improvement projects basically had a trend of outspending the amount of turnback dollars, and that's a poor practice. That practice has changed now, and hence we have to right that ship. We have to refund those reserves. The need to attract and retain employees, that's the common classification. The prior delays of county building needs. So that's basically talking about the Justice Center and the fact that we knew we needed to build it for almost the last 20 years. We didn't save any money to do it, and now the debt service is real. We have to pay for it. We had no choice. I don't like it. It was poor planning of the past. I'm not going to point fingers, but it's here in front of us.
Okay, Derek. Yeah, just to elaborate on that, with the Justice Center and the jail, 2002, 10th Judicial District, Corrections Department, got this jail out back. We're still paying on this dead horse till 2023, okay? They came in, there's deficiencies. Fix it, get a new one, your prisoners are gone. Same thing with the courts. They got this study back and it said $25 million for a jail, $20 million for a courts. Nothing happened.
That's from the state?
That's the Department of Corrections runs, who's our master for the jail, and the 10th Judicial District, who is their master for the courts. That's who tells us what level of service you're going to provide. Okay? If they move those prisoners, it costs us a lot of money. They did the analysis. They couldn't save this jail, so they ended up building a new one. But they didn't do it in 2004 when the study came out. They waited until 2006 to break ground. If anybody remembers construction cost index, what happened to the cost of concrete in 2006 and 2007? Quadrupled in price. All of a sudden, that $25 million jail turned into a $50 million jail. And at that time, they said, well, we're not going to do the Justice Center, and the economy collapsed. We got a pass from the 10th Judicial District for a while. Okay, fast forward here. Now we're doing the 10th Judicial District came back. You are going to build that courts now. That Justice Center out there is $47 million. Now, if anybody who's been doing the math on that, 2004, when they did a study, they knew what they had to do. It was $45 million for both. We have now spent $100 million out there for both buildings. That's the cost of...
How much square footage do you have here in the Justice Department compared to the square footage you have in the new Justice Center?
I don't have...
What is that?
The square footage of this entire building here?
For the Justice Center that you just built for $47 million.
It's
I'm just wondering, did it have
$156,000.
to be that big? I mean, why does it always have to be twice as big as really what you need? How many courts do you have, courtrooms do you have now?
6.
We have 6.
So you build 9.
They'll use this as a courtroom here. This room is,
You need 6, but you built 9. how many more?
Well, we have, I mean, not counting this room, we 7.
Yeah.
You actually have
That's all I'm
7.
saying.
And we built 9.
If you need it, but why do you have to overbuild? Same thing when you're gonna have a new government center. If you need it, I understand you need it, but you overbuild. And that's wasting our money. It really truly is.
Well, part of the, we'll discuss that a little bit later on, because
Are we gonna be able to fill up that whole thing when they move over there? I mean, 4 stories, it's a monstrous. I've never seen anything like it for such a small county.
Sir, I'd like to answer, I'd like to take that on for you. You don't build a building for today's need, you build that for what you're gonna need as the future growth. We're 134,000 people right now. By 2040, we're projected to be closer to 200,000 people. Okay? They got stats and they got caseloads and everything else where you need to be. In my world, I look at, for 20 years, we're gonna be making a bond payment. For 20 years, I don't wanna expand that building. All I wanna do is clean the carpets and wash the windows. I don't wanna have any expansion. When you start building buildings only for today, you're remodeling, you're expanding that before you're even done paying the bond.
How long has this building been here, and you're just finally starting to grow out of it?
The original part of the buildings are 1959, but there was expansions done in 89, 90.
Spending too much money. We wouldn't be here right now if you would think of everybody in this room instead of what you guys always want for yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's too much.
not what we want.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Growing government, you keep growing. It's so fat now, but it's getting fatter. You're spending too much money. Spend what you need and save the rest.
All right, then
Thank you.
let us finish the budget, and you tell us where you want us to cut. Let's continue.
And still meet the state law.
Thank you.
And still meet the state law.
I'm sorry. Thank you. The other side here, sorry, I'm just going to get myself reacclimated to where I was at, but thanks for the comments. Okay, so we talked about the prior county delay of buildings. Then we actually talking about the fact that we actually began a process that was never been done here, is we actually started creating financial models. We wanted to actually predict what are the impacts to you, because it is important that there is continuity amongst the tax rate and the levies in the county. We need to make sure that when you build a house in Wright County, you want to know that if you can afford it in 2018, you can afford it in 2022, 2024, 2030. You want your taxes to be, you want to know that they're linear. You shouldn't be having this. This shouldn't be happening. But here's the fact of the matter is that we've done a roller coaster of property taxes and levies in Wright County. If you were to look back, from 2004 to 2008 to 2012 to now, it's gone up and down, up and down. That's not true. It is true, because I mean, I'll pull up my tax statement right here. In 2010, my home value was valued at $213,000. I was paying $2,600 for my property taxes. This year's proposed, I am paying $2,800 on a $256,000 valued home. But my property taxes in 2012 were, 2013, my property taxes were $2,100. They were down from 2010, and then they've gone up and down. If I went back even further than that, it went up and down. And it's no correlation to the value. Yes, we can show the presentation. I mean, I want to, the biggest part of my illustration was that is, I'm trying to do something we haven't done and look forward to make sure that we're forecasting what are our expenses and how can we lessen the impact by that by forecasting it out so that we're not slamming taxpayers. Right now, the way it is that it's been whatever's in front of us. Don't even look forward to what the impact of that is down the road, and that's wrong. We're not doing a very good fiduciary duty for you by not looking forward. And it upsetted me, and I want to right that ship. Unfortunately, my tenure here is very, very short. I haven't been here, I'm just finishing out my second year at this, but I find it very important to us that we write that this shouldn't be like this.
I have a
They should have
question
that
when they
sheet.
say without using reserves. What reserves is that and how much is it and where is it?
6 months of operation is reserves. So basically 6 months of the budget, so of basically right around which would be like around 65 million. Basically, because we'd have to have enough to operate our first 6 months of operation. because until our first tax statement payments come in. All right. So this is kind of, we talked about the Justice Center. I'll kind of skip through it because we already kind of went through all those aspects. The other big thing that's driving our budget this year is increasing demands for services. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware that child foster care, mental health placements in the county are a multi-million-dollar line item in our budget. And you know what? It's all of you in this room that are paying for it. It's not state money, it's not federal money, it's local tax dollars. A small fraction of it, less than 10% of it, is state and federal funds. When a kids get taken out of a home, or when somebody with a mental health illness, suicidal, goes to these facilities and it's on county dollars, that's out of your pocket. And those costs are somewhere upwards of $1,000 to $1,400 a day. Literally handfuls of people are driving thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And we don't have a choice. That's a mandated service. If we do not do that, the state will do it for us and fine us and make us do it. And that number increased by $550,000 from last year to this year. Please understand, I mean, these are things that even if I wanted to cut that line item from the budget for you and lower your levy, it would be futile, because we would be just taking it from you next year because they would do it for us and they'd fine you. But what I want to do for you is I want to at least educate you and let you understand and know that, so that way you guys can go out there, because this is a social issue. This is something that we have to work together as a community to fix whatever it is that's causing these people the mental illness or causing these families to have their kids taken from them. This is a social issue. And this is an issue that we have to work with the state and the federal government. They're the ones that set the parameters that tell us what we take kids out of home for. They are the ones that tell us where we have to take these people to these facilities. The biggest problem here right now is the reason mental health cases cost us a lot of money is because there's no place to take them. We actually spend a lot of time shipping people all the way to Fargo because that's the closest bed we can get them in, and that makes that cost exponential. The state, so I don't want to bore you with all those details, but I'm happy to talk with anybody after the fact on that detail.
Is there any services for senior citizens on a fixed income to help pay their taxes?
Yes, so what I'm going to tell all of you right now, if your property taxes went up by more than 12%, you can fill out an M1 PR form with the state. I even got a link, I can email it to you, and that basically, you can get through a property tax rebate if your property taxes went up over 12%.
But you still have to pay it. You're using our small disposable income, which isn't that much, but you're taking that right away. Then we've got to file the M1 PR.
Yes, because that comes from a state, because the state gives all the parameters. I get it. But I don't make the rules of that, sir. I get it.
Every time we ask a question, the gentleman back here, the people over here, well, we can't do anything about this because the state mandates it. So what do you guys do anyway?
We administer the
all the time that you can't do anything because the state mandates it.
That's the layer of government that the county is. We are an administrative body. Okay.
I could have senior citizens do it over here.
Does it not, all this mental health is allowed due to the drug opioid?
Yes, yep. You're very, very right.
And sir, I'd like to expand on what you were talking about. We agree. We don't pass laws here. Legislature does, Congress does. And they push it down to us, and even with the state, they do cost shifts, they throw that monkey on our back. You guys deal with it. And they pass laws, we don't. We implement the laws they pass.
Okay, I'm on a fixed income. I get so much a month, that's it. All right? You're going over your budget and you're saying, oh, yeah, the state mandates this, the state mandates that, the state mandates, oh, we'll throw in $56,000 for our new police officers, if we can get any. But you increased my taxes by 20%. I'm still on that fixed income. Where am I going to come up with that 20%? You tell me. There isn't any money there.
Point noted, sir, and I get that you were very helpful there because you actually told me where you would say. You say you take it from the comp and classification study. And that's the point of this meeting, is to help us understand if it's not affordable to the taxpayer, where should the adjustments be made? And that's where it was very nice. You illustrated that very well, sir.
But you're dipping into an empty bucket.
And thank you.
Bob?
You keep telling us, okay, you tell us where to take the money. Of the $147 million budget that you're proposing, what is fixed and what is flexible, and flexible being what you want?
Well, flexible, what we want, I mean, there's things that you can.
What the fixed amount is?
The fixed amount is the 6.75 lead. I didn't get that number off the top of my head.
No, the fixed amount is the mandated part.
Of the levy, of the budget as a whole, or as just a levy increase?
I'm talking about your budget. You
The whole budget.
Tell us, you want us to tell you where to cut.
Yep.
So my question is, out of the $147 million budget that you've set, what is fixed that can't be cut?
Basically, most of the programs, I mean, that's where, unfortunately,
Percentage.
I don't have that percentage, because here's why. I brought this process up to actually,
Because you came up with a levy.
I don't have the index. I wish right now I had my index of mandated services, so I could honestly hand it right here, because it's a big book. And because I went and spent the last couple months looking to find this, and I actually was able to, through Washington County, they've indexed all of their mandated services, and they can tell you what percentage of their budget is actually mandated, that they can't even touch those numbers. We haven't done that yet. I'm sorry. I'm trying to climb a mountain, and I'm sorry that I can't climb it fast enough for you and to get that information for you.
But I'm trying to answer your question by asking you that question so we know how much of it, because if you're $6 million over the budget that isn't fixed, what's the $6 million? Yeah, we need that number.
I mean, but you can, things that are movable, I mean, we cannot do a comp and classification study. I mean, it's not required by law to do a comp and classification study. We could, that's 2.1, or 2.5 million is in the comp and
We
classification.
figure that would be with the increases, et cetera.
Yep. Actually, 500,000 of it we can't touch, so it's $2 million, because a portion of it is actually, is health insurance rate stuff that would be tied to union contracts. But about $2 million that would be adjustable through the comp and classification. New staff positions, $1,046,000 could be removed, some or all. But removing those positions, just like the comp and classification study, it's a shift in the expense. Because if you don't deal with it now, you'll have to deal with it in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And the cost, the cost to that is only getting more complicated.
Bob, regarding retired people, doesn't the state of Minnesota allow you to defer your property taxes?
I'm not an income tax person for anybody, but the state has a senior deferral program, which basically they'll pay part of your taxes, but they file a lien against you. I don't know if that.
Well, no,
And we get taxed on that.
I'm just saying, it's not.
So, I'm going to just kind of keep flying through as fast as I can here, because obviously I think you guys have a lot of valuable comments, and I want to get to all your comments. We're doing a lot of technology pieces here. This kind of plays into our lack of staff and being able to retain staff, and we're trying to build on technology to allow us to not need as many staff in the future. Currently working on is a variety of a grant from the federal government with $2.2 million on a potential training facility, which is still high level at this point, but it's down the road if whether we would or wouldn't do. The future of this building, whether we be in here remodeling this, that was that same discussion. The comp and classification, improving financial modeling. Here's an interesting point. I don't know if any of you are aware of what happened this year on September 15th. On September 15th, now go back in time, we set our preliminary levy on September 11th. A few days after setting our levy, we get a call from Department of Revenue letting us know that the Monticello Nuclear Power Plant had reached an agreement to reduce the value of the nuclear power plant by $69 million, 7.6%. Now, Tony's office does not assess the nuclear power plant. That is done through the Public Utilities Commission and the Department of Revenue. They set the value on the power plant. And they get to determine, the state gets to determine whether they get it reduced or not reduced. It's totally out of our hands. Well, they decided to reduce it. That reduction of 7.6%, that's $69 million, had a tax rate implementation of about a 0.375 to a 0.4% increase to the tax rate of the county because of that loss. They're now went from being valued at about 908 million down to about 804 million dollars because of depreciation and because of that huge reduction of that 7.6%. That is a huge tax shift from them to you. They are, as an industrial, pay a 2% tax rate. Residential, majority residential pays a 1% tax rate. Now, it takes two of your homes to equal one of theirs. It's a 2 for $1. If you're going to shift industrial to residential, when they're paying 2%, you're one. So $100 million lost in industrial is going to take $200 million shifted to residential payment. That was a real impact to what your statements look at right now, especially if you live in Monticello, because that hits you 3 times over. That loss is to the school, it's a loss to the city, and it is a loss to the county. The other people in the county are only seeing the county's part reflected that increase in your taxes. But people in Monticello are seeing it 3 times over, and that's where that's why my taxes went up 15.6, a lot of it. Not entirely all of it, but a good chunk of it, it did play into it. Now I'll answer a question. You want to say your name?
My name is John Cesarczyk. Are you done with the slide? I just had a question about the last slide real quick.
Sure.
Very long. What would be the county's portion of the FBI and Wright County joint venture on that building?
It's still real high level to be determined. We may go after state bonding bill on this. We haven't decided, we haven't fully committed anything at this point. There's no money really set aside, any substantial amount of money set by in this budget for it, so it's really kind of stretched out at this point.
Okay, and then the
No.
common classification study, the 2.5 million, have you already done a salary study?
It's in the process with Springstead. The results of that study will come back to us in April, and we'll have a discussion for hopeful implementation in July.
Wouldn't it make more sense to do that last year, so you would have more of an exact amount of what you...
We would have hoped to have gotten it done sooner than this, but unfortunately, they said that the large scope of the project, that they were going to need about 18 months to do it. We started it that long ago.
And just as a side point too, Minnesota is the only state in the union that assigns points to positions. So
Requires us.
require us. We have to have, every position has so many points, and then the wages are set on those different, classifications.
That's based on the Minnesota Pay Equity Law.
It adds another whole layer to, the complications that we deal with when we're making our
I guess
decisions.
My question is just more, wouldn't it make sense to have the salary study complete and know how much you need, and then ask for that in the next budget cycle instead of saying, we'll guess at 2.5 million, even though we're not sure how much we're going to need?
We could have gone that route, and we
could've-
still can. I mean, we shift it out and just have a later implementation.
As we could have added the Justice Center, knowing we've been working on this for 4 years essentially, we could have incrementally added maybe 2 million per year, so we didn't have the spike this year, but that's 2020 hindsight.
Okay.
Are we going to keep entertaining questions, but we have to start, do we need starting names on this, or are we going to just allow this to be open-ended? I don't. If right now, based on the minutes, the number of people that have spoken in the audience, your names will not be reflected in the minutes because we haven't been able to get names with entertaining these questions. I just want people to understand that if you're wanting your name to be quoted for the record, I will need your name we'll need you to come to the podium for that.
From the podium. She's-
So-
I suggest you get through the presentation.
Station? Yep, okay.
There you go. Let's do that.
Thank you.
Is that all right with you,
That's
ma'am? You've
okay.
been standing and asking.
I just want to be able to say what I would like to say, so if I don't get to do it now, when do I get to say something?
After we get done with the presentation, we're going to allow everybody to have an opportunity to
Not
speak.
much longer, not much longer.
So we're
I'm
done.
almost done the presentation here. So going over that nuclear piece, there's many pieces I can talk to you about this. I have followed this issue very, very closely. This is a very, very volatile situation because Xcel Energy has been posturing with the state that they feel that they are about 20 to 26% overvalued. So they've been kind of volleying back and forth on what they feel they should be with a valuation with the Department of Revenues. That's what hence precipitated the Department of Revenue this year to make a 7.6 reduction for them on their valuation.
Which in real dollars is?
Which that's with the $69 million reduction.
No, but.
They pay what they pay in tax.
Which, well, what they pay in taxes is, it's basically allowed them to be immune to the 17.3% levy increase. They're basically paying the same thing that they paid last year. They're basically shifting the entire levy increase of their $800 million valuation onto other taxpayers of the county. So, I agree, and I guess we have to all take our taxes, or take our property taxes to the Department of Revenue and tell them we want them to adjust our taxes like they did Xcel Energy's. Yep, so, once again, I'm not tax court, I'm not a Department of Revenue, I don't have that fiduciary responsibility or option.
Before we move on from the nuclear plant, keep in mind, $69 million this year, they're going after that same number for next year and the year after that.
They've been posturing that they want basically the Department of Revenue and the Xcel Energy, we're likely till they get to their 20 to 26% reduction, that we may be seeing a continued 6 to 7, 8% reduction in their value till they get to that goal.
The number was 7.1 million that they're paying in taxes, so
Yeah.
that's close to 10% of our levy.
Wow.
They're the largest taxpayer in Wright County, and they will still be the largest taxpayer in Wright County, even with reduction.
What happens if they don't get it?
Pardon me, if they don't get what?
They don't get what they want.
They could take us to tax court and we could lose substantially more, and a judge would rule that. That would be like your Enbridge cases that have taken place up north, where they've actually had such reductions that they've actually had to pay back more than their entire levy amount. So, some of those counties up there have a total levied budget of $6-8 million, and they're having to pay back $10-15 million. That's tragic situations. And those counties had nothing to do with it because they didn't even have the ability to set the evaluation of those properties.
Why aren't they pushing back against this?
They are, but unfortunately,
Doesn't sound like it.
It is. We work with
Yeah.
our
So
legislators to try and do it.
I will tell you right now, we've taken a very aggressive approach of wanting to be informed with Xcel Energy. I've gone to numerous meetings. I am following legislative pieces in St. Paul with this. We understand that Xcel Energy is looking to do a change and no longer wanting to be evaluated on a value style. They want to switch to being evaluated on a production style. Going similar to how solar farms are property taxes based on a production style, and that's what they would want for the nuclear power plant. If that would happen, based on legislative, or bills that were in the past session, we would have actually seen a huge tax shift, and that would have harmed us greatly. Luckily, that bill didn't pass. There's similar legislation that's coming out in this next session. We're hoping to get some local aid that would basically be set in place that would compensate us for those losses, but we need to have it done in such a manner that would basically be able to make sure it continues for more than just 1 or 2 years. Because unfortunately, when you get local aid, what happens is it goes away. The minute the legislator gets tight on their budget, it goes away. So we're trying to work on that, because we here in Wright County have this power plant, we have nuclear waste in our backyard, we have this power plant in our backyard, and we're okay with that because we're compensated for it. But if you're not, if you're going to have this in your backyard and you're not going to be compensated for it and have that offset and having that risk in your backyard, do you want it in your backyard? So we're trying, I'm trying to do my best representation for them. We love Xcel Energy, they've been a great partner with us, but we have some struggles right now and we're trying to work our way through it.
I'm assuming they would never leave.
Well, they're up for relicensure in 2030.
Yep.
Xcel Energy's, their goal, and their CEO just sent an email out, is part of their integrated resource plan is to be able to keep the power plants, both Red Wing and Monticello, open to 2030 and 2034 respectively, when they would be up for relicensure. That's part of their 80% carbon-free goal. Now, if we say we get to 2027 and the Monticello plant would need great substantial needs for repair, who's to say that, you know what, if they need to stick $200 million to repair the plant and they realize that they couldn't recoup the money before they would have to go up for relicensure, there is always a great risk that they would go for early closure. So that is a real issue that we have to watch. And that's the reason right now we're trying to set ourselves up for what ifs. That's where the financial planning comes in, is if the plant would shut off early, that I don't want to slam the taxpayers. I want to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And that's kind of where we're at.
What happens if they go away?
We have to,
$800 million in value. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Basically, we would take about a $7 to $8 million loss in the county revenue annually. Well, and that's where that's the reason we're advocating for them, but we're trying to make sure that what we're doing is budgeting in a manner that we're trying to wean ourselves off it. That's what this process is doing. That's where the forecasting comes in, because we weren't forecasting before. Had I known, if I was around on this budget when they did it back in 1970, when they came on board, I would have done it way different. I wouldn't have used Xcel dollars in the manner that the way they are used, because it's a lottery. It's not guaranteed to always be there. You need to treat that differently than you would treat other things.
Let's continue with
Sorry. So kind of talking about the growth, you know, right now, Wright County, we are in the top 5 for growth in the state of Minnesota. You see housing popping up everywhere, and it's hard. Right now, it's hard to be in the 10th lowest per capita spending and to be the 10th fastest growing. We struggle. That is a drive for services, and services that are driven for us are mandate driven. Sorry. So here's where I'm kind of talking about our forecasting and what we're doing in the county to talk about where we've been and where we're going. So if you look at here on the graph on the left, it kind of shows you the county's tax capacity and how it's grown since 2012 to 2009. The tax capacity is basically values of the homes, the tax base. So going in, your next graph shows the tax rate. That actually determines what everybody pays. And this is kind of illustrating the roller coaster that I alluded to earlier. Now shifting to this next slide is talking about kind of how we've been looking ahead and doing these forecasting out and trying to set us up for sustainability, predictability for the taxpayers. Going to this next slide here is the actual forecast. This sheet right here is one of many worksheets that we used in financial modeling for the county. We put it into simple graphs for you because if you looked at this, it would be kind of mind-numbing. So this forecast here, if you take the, sorry, I gotta flip my slide here in front of me. The blue slide, hello? I lost you? Okay. So the blue slide, the blue line actually represents on the tax capacity is if we assumed that Wright County was the worst case scenario, and the red line is kind of the best case scenario. So we used the metrics of the last 10 years, going back to 2008 to now. Wright County has had over a 2% growth in tax capacity. It has averaged over a 2% growth in tax capacity, and that's with the worst economy since the Great Depression. So we averaged growth by more than 2% since 2008 to now. And we actually had a shrinking in tax capacity from '08 to 2011 because of the downturn in the housing market. So we can use that. We know that as long as we're not predicting a worse than the Great Depression in the next 5-10 years, we can predict that we will be able to sustain a minimum growth of 2%. The top line, the 6% growth, is based on right now, Wright County has averaged over 7% in tax growth, in capacity growth over the last 3 years. Now, we chose to put the ceiling at 6 because of the shrinking valuation of the power plant. Now, the real goal is behind it is to use the area between the two lines is what you want to predict is what your future tax capacity would be. Now, you take that to the next one, the graph on the right, and you put that into your county tax rate. That's where you want to be able to predict the areas where you want to get your county tax rate, where you predict your county tax rate would fall. So you can predict where people would pay. Is, best case scenario, you're hoping to be into a 41, 42 tax rate. On the worst case scenario, you're looking at a 47 to 50 tax rate. And there's a lot of things that play into it because that's where you actually use this piece here and you're plugging in how much each debt payment would be coming in, when it falls off, what are we expecting the future COLAs to be. It gives us better information when going into different negotiations.
Derek, I think that it, would be good to highlight the fact that in your 2 slides back or 1 slide back, the past tax capacity, where in 2013, the tax rate was higher than it's going to be in 2019. So at the same valuation, if your house was $250,000 in 2013 and it's $250,000 in 2019, your taxes would actually be lower by the tax rate. So
Provided your value was the same.
Right, the value is the same. So like you said, we kind of had this roller coaster, but actually, it went up in 2013 and then it dropped. And if you look back on your valuations or whatever, they're not the same, but just telling you and trying to work toward that steadiness so we're not having that jump.
So I got just one more slide here, so I'm going to keep moving here real quick. So the last slide is I wanted to let everybody know that the real numbers that drive your tax rate, or your taxes, is your tax rate. It's the most linear thing that you can use to compare what people pay. And we are still, based on this graph, yes, chart, our tax rate did go up. I am not going to lie that. But we are by far below, but we were actually really low to a fault, to the point where it wasn't sustainable. I mean, we're not immune. These counties, comparable to us, have the same mandates. All counties have the same mandated services. We run lean here, extremely lean. I would love to run leaner if it was possible. I'm glad you're here tonight, because that's the next discussion that we're going to have, is where do you think we can do things different? I really hope I was able to give at least some of you some good information. I struggled greatly with wanting to make sure that you felt like you had a good understanding of the process that we went through, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute break so Deb's fingers don't fall off.
Why don't we just...
Give us a chance for us, or 10 minutes break, to give us a chance to go to the restroom. Vending machines out down the hallway if you need something.
Gets pretty late.
So here's what we'll be doing. Come up to the podium. You can either form a line and continue going, or you can raise your hands and we'll let you go up there. When you're at the podium, we need your name and the city that you're living in, or township. And it looks like we have candidate number 1.
Get it started. My name's Dan Gerke. I'm from Monticello. I also work in Monticello in the human service field. And I'm here regarding probably like it seems to be like a lot of people. I'm not here to appeal my market value. I'm just talking about the levy portion of it, although I'm going to attest to that a little bit. My estimated market value only increased by 7.3%, and my taxable market value increased 8.8%. I've appreciated the commissioners, I've appreciated the presentation tonight because you've educated me on some things that I did not know, so that was helpful. This proposal, though, is increasing my taxes by 20.5%. In my 25 years as a Wright County resident, I have touted, truly, our county to numerous other professional couples as a fair and equitable place to live. But if your proposal is put into practice, I will not be compelled nor really able to continue to make this claim, which may in turn lead to counterproductivity as far as clientele that come to the county. Professionals such as myself may leave the county, paving the way for others to come that may burden, I believe, the HHS component that you've addressed that is hitting us so hardly. So I believe that professional couples may leave the county and out-of-home placement may increase or overburden the foster family availability. So I urge the county to consider, reorganize, readjust, whatever you need to do. I saw 2 components that you were already addressing, the staff requests and the comp class portion of the budget. So even though that might not alleviate everything, that's what I strongly urge you to consider, readjusting. I as well, and I'll leave it at this, am getting hit because of where I live.
Yeah.
So you understand that. And
Monticello, you're getting the triple whammy.
Yeah. So you're just one of the meetings that I'm going to. But I would appreciate your candor in just addressing my problem as well as it seems like many others.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jan McLean. My address is My name's Jan McLean, and my address is 10931 57th Street Northeast, Albertville. I live in a 55 and over townhome where there's 36 units, 9 quads attached, and very small yards. We have approximately 1,600 square feet, and I just feel like $250 a year. I've been there, this will be my 3rd tax increase, so my taxes have gone up $650 in 3 years. That's a lot of money, and right now I can afford it, but I don't know how long I can. And most of the people who live where I live, they're 70s, 80s, some people are in their 90s, and they're very limited incomes, perhaps just Social Security maybe, Social Security disability. So these tax increases are killing them. They're going to kill me eventually. The talk of I can't afford to live there anymore, I'll have to move. I mentioned the tax deferral thing. That's a joke. I mean, that's not going to help anybody. But if you guys could please plead with the state, I don't know what you do, I'll plead to Amy Klobuchar, whoever, to come up with something to help us, help the senior citizens. I don't know who to talk to or what to do. We're beside ourselves.
See, no, I live in Albertville also.
Okay.
Our school district has been, oh, yeah, it's gone nuts there. So if your whole tax bill's gone up, that school portion has gone nuts because we have 220 million in bond debt, second highest, and now it's third highest in the
Hockey
state.
arenas.
And we have a smaller, Buffalo has a bigger school district, so their tax rate for that school is a lot less than we are. It's a killer. I go down on transportation stuff to the Capitol twice a week when they're in session, and I take pretty much every issue I hear down there and talk to them. And I go to hearings, I've been testifying different things, and most of the time it falls on deaf ears. They want to give you good lip service, but when it comes to the vote, they go into caucus and say, oh, we had to cut something out, and that just we had to cut out. These disproportional things they're doing, like for school, the equalization, they got a big fix, and they do not want to address it because the larger school districts in the metro have full-time lobbyists making sure that we don't get that. They'll give us a little bit here or there. Say we need $2 million, they'll give us $100,000. Hey, look, we gave you something. Those are the challenges we got, especially when you're in a fast-growing district and fast-growing town. The local government aid, the LGA for cities, is based on pre-1940 housing units. I know that because I used to be mayor of Albertville. Based on pre-1940 housing units. So Albertville was not very many people pre-19, and then they give you a percentage after that.
Yeah, we only have 7,000 people for
I
crying
know,
out loud.
but it's based on pre-1940 housing units is your baseline, instead of being based on what it is now. So Minneapolis can lose 50,000 people and get a $2 million increase. During my 10 years as mayor, we doubled in population, we got a $36,000 increase. Wow, wasn't that nice? And they refused to touch it. These are things that kill when you've got a collar county, you're growing like this. A lot of pressures from these different things that they're not doing. Any of you remember when it went from 6% to 6.5% on sales tax? Hey, do you know what that other 0.5% was for? Local government aid for the cities to help them keep their levies down. You know what happens once we all sent resolutions in and passed it? Oh, we got free money now, screw you, we're not doing that. They took it and put it in a general fund. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. I have a hard time when I'm down there because I try to keep my Irish tongue in check, and Dave is a classmate, he knows that sometimes it's hard for you to do. I mean, you try to get these guys to understand that these pressures out here, it's got to give somewhere, because all those collar counties like we are having the same exact pressure. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, it's not being a fairly funded formula by any stretch, and they have no will to change it. They don't want to.
Well, when you go, can you please work for the senior citizens? I mean, it is a struggle. It's a struggle. And I mean, tell me who I can call and talk to or write to, and maybe I can round people up to.
Your legislators.
The best way to get local government aid is the best way for us to be able to offer property tax relief. Because property tax relief from the state level, through their mechanisms of setting what the homestead exclusions and stuff aren't going to equal an impact. They're not going to consistent, and they're not going to equal the same impact as it would be as if we get better local government aid, because that's basically makes your pie, your portion of the pie, smaller.
And here's another point for it. We got an increase in our county program aid for 2018, but they shifted the same amount of money out of health and human service onto our budget. Oh, look, we gave you county program aid. Look, we gave you an increase. Yeah, and you took the same exact amount out of health and human service and put a monkey on our back. And so they're going look at us. We got a $1.5 billion surplus, and they're chomping at the bit figuring out how to spend that, and they're not doing it through relief.
Or you can go with them, the fact is, eliminate some of the mandates, but careful on that side of it too, because I don't know which one of those mandates you'd eliminate. I don't think we should eliminate child mental health. It's an expensive mandate, but I think it's important, but there's a long list of those too, so from law enforcement as well, but those have real
Our law
dollars.
enforcement went up $25,000.
Just one thing for the out-of-home placement. We just had our AMC conference this last weekend and earlier this week. That was the number one driver that was a lot of counties, the smaller, poorer counties, was going to bankrupt them. We got to go to Fargo, okay, we got growth, we got things here, it still kills us. You take a Beltrami County, Kitson County, and they got to ship somebody hither and yon.
At the tune of $1,400 a day?
At $1,400 a day, it'll kill them. I mean, the Native American tribes up there in Beltrami County, they're already broke. They're screaming at the federal government to help them because they don't know what to do.
Thank you for your comments. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
We do appreciate your time. Sir?
Good evening, Commissioners. Dave Zumbush, Chatham Township, Buffalo, Minnesota. First off, I do appreciate your sincerity, Mark, Christine, Derek, Mike. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a certified financial planner, so I really appreciate you crunching numbers and doing this. But here's the numbers, that's what everybody's here, is the percentage has gone up large. So dollar amount's one thing, and I know you guys are working on this, but like, if my house goes up 5% and my taxes go up 17%, that's a disconnect.
Yeah.
If inflation is only 3%, so all of us sitting here, an average wage increase would be 3 to 4 to 5%. You just bumped our taxes 17% on one of the properties, and you bumped it 11% on another property I got. So the line items I would ask you to think about is you're trying to catch up for like past years. I think like this one gentleman mentioned, we are like building a doggone nice courthouse. And the square footage cost is very, very large. So I think when people come to you and say, we need this, need that, that you're conscious of that extra cost. And like you have commercial buildings, you know, if you can save 20 bucks a foot, it's huge. But my thought to you would be this, that if you go back to percentages, so taxes, the levy on the county one, I'm not talking school district, anybody else, I mean, my county one went up 17, some are higher here. And if 4% is inflation, actually it's less than 3, but if I just give you the benefit of doubt that it's 4, find a number in there, ladies and gentlemen, where I knew you'd get shit on by the state, and they take money away from you, and you gotta go to raise our taxes, like the first gentleman that talked. Raise it a comfortable percentage amount, and look at that. If you hit me with 17, that's, I mean, if my property goes up 17, it's a whole different story. Find that number that we can live with, Derek, and run it. If I think 7% is a more than generous number. So the last thing that you had offered us is, what would you cut? You're the experts on that, what you would cut. There's some crap you can't cut, right? Health and Human Services, you're like, it's a hot poked iron in you. But I ran just a rough number. You got to somehow save $9 million on this budget. $9 million will drop us down to about a 10% raise.
You're correct. You did the same number run that I did. So you're right, 9 million.
So I don't know where you find the 9 million. You know, that's your job and the other people you talk to. So try to find $9 million.
And Dave, and that's where you're right on the 9 million. I'm trying to figure out, but what things do you do that don't have a negative inflationary adverse effect? That's
I
where,
know.
that's the side that I'm trying to avoid.
The $1 million that you're going to set aside for the, your next 6 months here, I see that one.
Yeah.
The 2.4 million that you had up here for maybe this building doesn't work for you, you got to set money aside. I'm not sure where you're going to cut it from, Derek, but you got to lower our taxes just a hair.
Yep, and that's in there. I understand your point on that, and that's where I just wanted to point that out, just because I'm trying to also not have a negative adverse effect with inflationary costs, and then also the fact of the increasing loss of the potential loss of tax capacity because of what's going on in Excel. I'm trying to avoid that too, because I don't want to make a bad situation even worse. So, but I understand.
Unless there's a department, I think there are some departments in this county, you have too many employees in. I won't tell you what a department is. I'm not going to blow that.
We'll do some looking.
But if you drive around, Charlie, you said last time I was here, there's a lot of people on some jobs. Okay? And they got really nice stuff. So.
Thank you, Dave.
We went up 0.5% last year. That's one of the problems that we had this.
Mark, my name is Mark Anderson. I live at 10057 Darrow Avenue Northeast in Monticello. Earlier, you had shown on the presentation, a pie that's divided into where this money's going. I guess my question is, and I don't know if it was addressed, if it was, I missed it, and I apologize, but what portions of that pie have increased the most for the 2019 budget? And
That's a good question.
not including parts of it that are mandated by the state.
Yeah, buildings.
Parts in there.
Respectively, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
respectively, they're all pretty linear. Now, I will note, now, if you look at the 2018, a pie of 2018 spending to 2019 spending, general government grew by about a 1.5% to 2%, but that's only because we are using a placeholder in that for the comp and classification study. So in all actuality, if you compare the 2018 spending to 2019 spending, they're all pretty linear. Most of them, they won't even show up because they're less than a 1% differential in the cost shifts.
Then what percentage of those, I mean, they're linear, but what percentage are variable?
The biggest one that changed in this pie graph from 18 to 19 is debt service, and that's because of the oncoming debt service of the potential. We're placeholding new debt service for whether we do a repair here, or we build a new building, or whether we remodel this building, that's held in there. And then we also have the debt service payment that's just coming on in this Justice Center. That's where you'll see a biggest increase is in that line. That's expenditure.
Okay, so with that, and with, you're talking about, buildings or whatever it may be. And I don't want to just nitpick on one little thing here or there, but I'm wondering if, is there much thought, I mean, I'm sure there is some thought, but how much thought is given to, like, for example, building a swan statue on the corner of Monticello? I mean, how much thought is given to what is the benefit of that versus the tax burden on the taxpayer?
And the city funded that one. I couldn't.
No, I understand.
But there is a lot of thoughts.
Anything, but I'm sure that there's other things at a county level that people can point to. Like, do we need to have a roundabout on every intersection? Things like that. And when we do put a roundabout, you have to beautify them in such a way with flowers and whatnot. And these are all little things, but all these little things may add up. And I guess I would just plead that you really look at, there are benefits to the community for some of these things, but do they outweigh the burden on the taxpayer?
Just to get you on this one, Mark. When it comes to roads, the county, state aid, and CASA highways, those are a formula based on the gas tax you pay the state when that comes back to us, and we have to fix roads to certain standards. They have standards for roundabouts, and it's crash data there. It's like towards zero deaths. So instead of a T intersection where you get people T-bone that, they do roundabouts because nobody dies in those things. Okay? Are they perfect? No. Okay, that's the flavor of the day with MnDOT right now. And they seem to have the highest safety factors there because nobody's dying on those things. And they are meant to drive, like the one lady said, driving in the middle of it, they are meant to be that way. The semis are meant to drive in the middle of it to get around them.
Well, yeah, and I understand that. And again, though, I just, picking a couple of things, but, there's a multitude of projects where I'm sure that a lot of people in this room would say, Jesus, what the hell did you put that in there for, and yeah, I'm glad I paid money for that.
Absolutely.
Stoplights are actually more expensive and way more dangerous for people, but anyway.
Yeah, they're by the way, they're not very motorcycle friendly either, especially when you can't see around the mound that's in the middle.
Well, I appreciate you making those comments because I think it's important that those get out there, that people realize that things don't need to be the Taj Mahal. I mean, it's about being efficient and being what gets the job done.
Right. I mean, I would never be able to run a business this way. No way. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before the next person comes up, I want to make a comment. Mike, what did the Justice Center cost us per square foot?
Okay, the Justice Center that's under construction is $285 a square foot.
In Elk River, Sherburne County?
Sherburne County just built theirs, $430 a square foot. The 430 to 285 is the difference between us paying attention and us just letting the architect go wild. So we are paying attention to costs on this, and Sherburne County is jealous as hell of us right now because of what they spent on that building up there. And go
What
tour.
square footage are you going from? That was my question. What are you going from to?
I can do the research, sir, and find out that answer. I just don't have the top of my head.
I'm pretty close
That
there.
was my question.
Okay. Currently, we have,
His question was the square foot price.
the square foot what?
Square foot price, which we just stated.
285 a square foot, okay?
Yep.
We currently have 78,000 square feet for the justice part here. The study from 2004 showed we needed 98,000 square feet. Okay, that's 2004. How many years ago was that? 14. Okay, the new Justice Center is 150,000 square feet. The idea behind it is for the 20 years that you and I are paying for this thing, I don't want to have to expand that turkey. I don't want to do any remodeling. I don't want to do an add-on like you see with the schools. They'll do a school, and then 2 years later, they're adding on to the damn thing. We're doing this in STMA all the time. They barely get done with construction. They're starting another learning on it. That's ridiculous, because then you got debt on debt on debt on debt.
They have $190 million in long-term debt.
Yeah, and they're just, it's nuts to do that. Okay, just another thing with the jail. I want to get this out here before people go into a different subject. The jail they built out there was $25 million in 2004. They waited until 2007 to start building it. It's $50 million. They borrowed $52.3 million on a $50 million building. You ask why? Capitalized interest. They had no payment for 2 years. They thought they were going to get federal prisoners. Didn't happen. Okay? Then, to add insult to that injury, they backloaded the debt. We paid on that thing for 10 years. We refinanced that in 2017. We still owed $41 million on it. And they backloaded so much, if we had not refinanced it, these kind of increases you'd see every year, because that you have to pay back. When you don't pay that principal all them years, eventually it gets back at you. And the interest rate was higher.
Mike, say the good news, though. It went from about 4.5% when we refinanced it down to 2.
That one was
3.03
average.
3.03.
Yeah.
So we really dropped
3.03.
it down.
But it was higher than that.
We actually saved $6 million, so our payment went down by $600,000 for the 10 years that we had remaining.
Okay, sorry, just trying to get as much information out as possible. One of the things that this board has tried to do was provide more information out to the public. If you go on the county website, under the county auditor, you'll find the budgets, the monthly, what we've spent, where it went. All that information is on the county website. Sir, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mark Wolfschlager. I live at 17863 54th Street Northwest, South Haven. And I appreciate the information you've shared. It got at one of my questions, because my main question is, why are my property taxes going up 17% in 1 year? Now, you said a big chunk of that appears to be due to the devaluation of Monticello nuclear plant. Okay, I can believe that. Sounds like another big chunk is your new county buildings and stuff, but true, I mean, you can't live in a 20-year-old building forever. That makes sense. But, I don't know, I mean, is there something else? Are those the two big factors for this increase?
Well,
Or is there something else going on?
That's the out-of-home placement, also mental health, children's mental health, social services, and those are other factors. Those are other drivers that, like say.
True. Yeah, Health and Human Services. I mean, they destroyed the mental health system 30 years ago.
When they closed down St. Peter and all the places, what they do, they put them in jail. That costs us more money. Then all of a sudden they're released. They're not treating them. They need to, I think the 1.5 billion they got, they should put that to health, mental health issues. Right there, they could help save us a lot of money. Because right now, that whole mental health thing, that's our monkey right here.
Right.
And I can't pass that down to the cities or the townships. That's us at the county.
And true. I mean, the opioid problem, I mean, big pharmaceutical companies were pushing opioids for the last 20 years. And all the federal government does is lie. Oh, we're going to do something. We're going to fix that. And it's a flat-out lie.
Well, they collected the taxes on that sales of all those pills.
Well, you got to quit voting for those kind of people.
Absolutely.
Amen, brother.
Amen is right.
Lane, try to be nice this year.
Okay, I'll try to be nice once.
I'm just glad Lane's here, because I tell you, I would have been really upset if you weren't here tonight, Lane.
It would have, I know I made your day, Derek.
We would have missed you.
I would have really missed you, Lane, and
So, Lane Roshan, St. Michael, and they refer this way because I come, one of those people that do go to the Truth and Taxation meetings pretty much on an annual basis. I haven't made all of them, but I've made a lot of them. So I consider all these people my friends. And these people are all fiscal conservatives, even though that it may not appear tonight that they are. And I know they're doing a great job for us. And it's hard for me to say that because I'm as critical as anybody in our county about taxation and about spending. So, but there are a few things that I do want to address. The first thing though is, I heard from she left, what can we do as citizens? I tell you what people can do as citizens is to gather together and go down to the Capitol and meet with legislators. And I don't just mean Marion O'Neill, I don't just mean Bruce Anderson, I don't mean just Eric Lucero, I don't just mean Joe McDonald, I don't mean just Dean Erdahl, I mean other legislators, because that's how action takes place. So now, I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple things in here in terms of setting the table with some of the concerns I have here. People in here should not forget, it isn't just about the 7.3% levy, it's also the fact that because of roundabouts and other things, the county implemented a half-cent sales tax this last year, which minimally is costing you at least $40 on top of the increases you have here. And if you bought things like a Cub Cadet or something like that, boy, did you pay a lot of money this year in sales taxes that went to roads. It's better that they went to roads than it is some other things, but people should be aware of that. So I'm interested to know what the 2010 budget was for Wright County. Does anybody know that?
2010?
2010.
I can grab it real quick.
I'm going to just put a WAGs out there that was probably about $90 million.
You working on it, Lee?
Yeah, it was,
I'm trying hard.
I think it was about 100 million when we.
Because I know in
came on board.
2014 or 13,
I think when we came on board, it was
was about 100.
100,000. Yep.
Was about 100. So it has to be less than that, maybe 90.
94, probably, something like that.
Okay, so Wright County, since 2010, there's now 9,000 more residents in Wright County than there was in 2010 in the census. We're at 134 versus 125. That's a 7.2% increase. Gentlemen before here, the CPA said, okay, you figure at 3% inflation. Now, if you figure that those two things, that's what, 10.2%, right? If the budget was $90 million in 2010, and you guys are asking for $147 million, that's a 63% increase. 63%. You contrast that versus the 3% inflation plus 7.2% population, that's only 10%. Now, I recognize some of you, Derek especially, are new to the board, right? So I know some of the sins, as you refer to, were in part discretionary spending. I'm not going to name what those are. I think you guys know which ones I'm talking about. Discretionary spending that maybe didn't need to happen earlier this decade. And we're paying the price for that because we have less flexibility now than we did before. And it becomes your problem. But that said, when it comes to discretionary spending, it's not just what's there, these three pieces right there. Those are just the increases. You've got other things in the budget that aren't noted up here that perhaps could be looked at in terms of what you're going to cut.
Absolutely.
People refer to, okay, are we right-sized in all the departments, for example? Do we need to buy new vehicles this year? For example, the city of St. Michael, and while I have my complaints with the way that they spend, they actively look for equipment that isn't always brand new. Actively look for it. And that means they repair it. They don't always have to have brand new snowplows. They'll find a used one. And part of it is because we have a very good management guy, Ed Haller.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very good guy, right? And he looks for deals. I would ask the county to do the same thing because those vehicles are damned expensive.
Well, and they do go 12 years, like on a snowplow. They're 12 years old before they finally go.
Right.
So, and they're set up to be, so we're not buying 10 new snowplows every year, because like you say, they're damn expensive.
I don't get to, and I know you, Mark, you don't get to improve your business as often as perhaps you'd like to. I don't get to do the same thing. And it irritates me. I'd rather see a truck that is 5 years old from the county or older than I'd rather see new stuff all the time, because I don't take any pride in seeing a brand-new vehicle out there. I get irritated about it in terms of that type of vehicle. Snow plows, different story, I get that.
Well, the other vehicles, again, normally they're at least 10 years old before they go. The only ones that move around a little bit faster are the
Squad cars.
the sheriff's cars, squad
And then
cars.
they
There's
get-
safety reasons for that.
Yeah.
They park them on the railroad tracks.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Lane.
No, it's okay, Mark, you know. So now talking a little bit about the nuke plant and the 5-year plan, because you're right, $7 million. I've had different conversations and the worst case scenario conversations with people from Excel. If that $7 million goes away, that currently the county is getting in terms of property taxes, if you're looking at $130, $140 million current budget, right? $7 million disappearing over the course of the next 10 years' time, or less, potentially, depending upon what Excel decides it wants to do with nuclear power versus other things. That's going to be automatically for all the residents here, that's going to be a 5% hit without anything else happening.
10 maybe.
If it goes away, worst case scenario. So my question is, okay, if you're looking at a 7.3% levy now, what's the 5-year plan? Are we seeing this is going to be the new plateau and we're going to continue this with modest increases over the course of time? Are we going to see continued jumps?
Well, forecasting out based on what we're looking at is trying to set where we're at and trying to keep ourselves, I mean, my goal is I don't want to see our tax rate, we're going to get at 44.1. My goal would be to say, provided Excel doesn't fall off on me next year or they don't get a monstrous decrease, we'd be able to keep us right around where we're at right now and shrink as the capacity grows. Now, the way I predict it out right now is if the tax capacity continues at a 5 or 6% growth rate, provided Excel doesn't devalue more than what we grow, I should be able to see our tax rate at this point start to shrink back down by 2020, 2021. You would start to see it decrease down on a slow trajectory. If Excel devalues and we stay at about a 4% tax capacity growth, saying we have 6% increase in new capacity, but 2% loss because of Excel, and we stay at about a 4, we'd be flat right where we're at right now. But the plus side would be is if we do this right now, we would be able to get all of our building needs covered by time 2030 comes around. We would have enough bonds fall off to absorb the loss of the Excel energy easily. And that's where the point is if we do this now, we're setting ourselves up to weather if it would go away. If it would stay on, we don't know. We're in a great situation, but I'm preventing you guys from getting, I mean, unbelievably slaughtered in 2030 as far as the tax bill goes. And that's the reason it was important that we actually predict out and try to put some models in place.
So then let me introduce the holistic part of the equation again, which you hear me speak about all the time. We're not just talking about the county here when people that are complaining about why they're here. And I know, Mike, you mentioned it. I went to Monday's STMA TNT meeting and I gave them an earful like I usually do.
I
And they deserve it.
appreciate that.
And I'm sure other people have the same situation in their school property taxes. And you're having the same situation in your city taxes. And they're getting health insurance. It ain't getting any cheaper. For some of us, especially small business people, you've been killed in the last 10 years. Absolutely killed. And farmers as well. You've been killed because you're on the open market. My question is, people can no longer afford government as it's structured today. It needs to change. Needs to change. I understand the mandate issue. We've talked about it many times. And I know you guys are all advocates for that. I hope for better results in the election to be able to change things in the state of Minnesota. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. So we are stuck in the situation, not just having fewer mandates, we're going to have more mandates as a result of what happened in the election. That's my biggest concern.
And Lane, the other thing, besides mandates, more cost shifts.
Correct.
And just so you understand what a cost shift means, it used to be your expense, now it's my expense. That's how the state and the Fed does it all the time. They balance their books, they make themselves look great that way.
Correct. So, again, the other part I'll mention is, I know you guys have to plan ahead in terms of what you anticipate growth to be like. We all see interest rates going up. That should be the red flag that perhaps that growth factor that you all think is going to happen ain't going to happen. We've lived now for 10 years, almost, 8 years of growth in the housing market and in values. History has said that there's always a cycle. And when that cycle happens, could be sooner than later. And so I would ask, again, through this holistic model, I would ask for extreme caution.
Lane, I'll respectfully disagree with you on the bottom, because 2012 was the bottom, because I bought enough real estate there at the bottom. It was ungodly cheap then, and it bounced back after that, and it's come back with a vengeance. The next, if you, depends on which gurus you subscribe to or listen to, they're saying 2022 is our next recession, real recession. Now, we're going to have a bunch of little mini ones here, but that's the next real one. And that would kind of chime in with the cycle a little bit, but all bets could go off tomorrow. We don't know. That's their best guess as of today.
And as you can imagine, Mike, my guru is Peter Schiff, so no surprise there.
Yeah.
But, so I would ask for extreme caution, because I don't think the good times are going to last like they have been here. And St. Michael, STMA is making huge mistakes as a result of their anticipated additional growth.
And their anticipated additional growth is based on open enrollment. They close open enrollment, our problem goes away for a long time, okay? But they refuse to even talk about it. So but keep in mind, Lane, there's this saying I tell people and tell these guys up here, nobody remembers who lit the fuse. They just remember who was there when the bomb went off. The bomb's going off right now. The fuse was lit a long time ago. The bomb's going off right now.
Right.
And for future, just so you know, this 17.3 now scared the bejeebers out of all of us. We didn't like that at all.
Well, we started out at 24.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, this is nuts. So we're trying to do some forecasting, so, okay, if we take the hit this year, get through some of this stuff, try to make sure we're under double digits from here on in, period, to make these corrections now, because the tax rate, when that lowered like it did, that's where the problems began. Like my commercial property, even with this budget here, my value stayed the same. I am paying less in 2019 on that property tax than I paid 3 years ago.
And that goes back to the way the state complicated system works.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Because one of mine is even, same thing. One of my businesses. The other one only went up 2.7%. It doesn't make sense, but that's the state's system.
And, I got to mention, I don't consider it to be a roller coaster. It's a dip in the tax rate. And I can guarantee you, with the increasing values that happened during the time on residential properties, everybody's taxes went up, unless you had an assessor come in and reassess your house.
And Mr. Chair, Lane, I appreciate bringing that up about the cautious, because I mean, I'm a doomsday kind of forecaster on all that stuff. I always look at it, if you can live through it in the worst of times, you can certainly do better for people in the best of times. And that's the reason, like, I want to reiterate the fact that in this new financial modeling that we're doing is that we're actually taking those term back dollars and using them for debt service, and that makes our loans callable sooner, which puts us in a position to weather much more challenging economies than our current model that we have no mechanism to weather a 2 or 3 bad year. If we got a bad year in 2022, 2023, we could tip into those debt service funds to offset levies to weather people through. At this current state, I don't have any mechanisms. So they're just spending it as fast as debt services are coming in. And that's crazy. I mean, you know as well as I know that that's not a good practice.
No shock. Nobody likes a big surprise like this one.
No.
I agree. But one could argue that the surprise, maybe some of it didn't need to happen at all. one other thing, I know, Mark, I interrupted you much earlier in this whole thing. Part of the frustration for people is the cycle of what they get, their assessed value, and when they find out what their property taxes are. It would be nice if the county had a what-if tool for them to be able to play with to see what their taxes would be. And I know it's always subject to change depending upon levies and all the other things we're talking about, but at least it gives them an idea based in the assessed value, what it would have been, assuming that the same scenario played in the prior year. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, now, we can do that, Lane, because we did that a couple years ago. What if your value didn't change? What would this budget mean to you? You know, what would it change that? And those tools, we played with that a little bit. We need to refine that a little bit more than we've had. And then the thing is, like, the property value and the taxes are collected 1 year in arrears. So next spring, when you get that notice of valuation, by God, if you don't like it, you better show up, make an appointment at the assessor's office or your local city, township there. Get yourself on the cycle so you can argue this thing. If you wait until the time passed, you're stuck. You know, and that's the system we got here. It's always 1 year in arrears, and that's why, like in Charlie with the farmer cases, the farm prices went up nuts, and then when the prices go down, they basically getting rate for 2 years after that. I mean, and that's a killer with the system, because when it was going up, well, no problem. But when the bottom falls out and you're still paying that high rate, that's what's killing these farmers right now.
Yep.
Agriculture is a little different than typical residential stuff. So you could have a residential tool. It wouldn't be that hard. I could even create one.
You can do it for any classification you want.
But there's more volatility with agriculture than a pure residential house, unless the bottom one falls out completely.
Yeah, your wage doesn't drop down 50% 1 year and then, you know, whatever.
Well, my health insurance has, but it's gone up that much. Anyway, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lane. Thank you, Lane.
I have a very loud voice, so I'm just going to stay here, but I want to know.
Your name,
Yep,
please.
name and-
Carol Stein, and I live in Rockford Township. What I'm kind of curious about is our demographics has changed drastically in the last 6 years. And when you talk about mandates by the state and building a new courthouse and new justice center,
Okay.
and that's mandated. And we're bringing in inmates from all the other counties. And we're getting paid to take those.
That's the jail. That's
Yep,
not the
jail.
justice center, that's the jail.
Yep, that's not justice.
System, I'm trying to understand
Yeah,
this.
sure.
Okay.
Okay. So what are we being mandated as a county to do to accommodate what's going on? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what we're being mandated for.
Are we talking courts, are we talking jail, are we talking sheriff?
All of
Okay.
it.
Public safety.
Public safety, okay, courts. They have standards in which courtrooms must have to make sure people get a fair trial.
Base
Okay.
safety and security.
Security, everything else.
technology.
The current one we had, when it was built in 1959, Perry Mason would have been proud of that, in 59. Okay, right now they gotta take the prisoners through a sally port, through the back hall to get there. They're saying, oh, that's not fair to them because they hear the chains clanging, they're gonna get, I don't want a murderer getting off. Okay, when this was built way back when, all we had is a couple of petty thefts, Otis of Mayberry type people. We had an execution down there at Crow Springs Park. It's a different game right now. And each court, each type of court has a different layout to make sure that the people are getting their justice. I mean, and those standards are put by on the bench, the federal to the state, and then us. The 10th Judicial District is our master on the courts, okay? You don't want to underbill it. You don't want to, one gentleman was like, why are you making it so big? I don't want to touch that thing for 20 years while we're paying for it. I want to make sure it's big. Now, we got 6 courtrooms, that one's being 9. Okay, so if we had a couple extra courtrooms, okay, say there's an ICE custody hearing, they'll rent that courts from us, okay? And sometime we'll grow into needing those. I just don't want to do that again. These courts up here have been remodeled so many times.
They're awful.
They started
Well,
out
they're
with
awful,
3.
but
They started out
Leander,
with
you've
3.
been here long enough. You know, this has been remodeled so many times, you don't know what the heck is there and not there and what was originally in there. And this is an extra overflow type court. They hold different types of court here too. And these things, you can only remodel something so many times before it doesn't work anymore.
One's an old vending room.
What was that? I'm sorry.
One of the courtrooms is an old vending room,
Their old lunchroom.
old lunchroom, yeah.
So those are some of the things with just the Justice Center, the courts part. And of course, then you've got your court services. You know, people come probation, they got to take a UA, you know, urine analysis. And then you got to make sure that they're segregated from people, because when people fail that urine test up here, hey, it's police city lockdown type, because they go nuts. They come in, they think, oh, I got niacin, or I got something to do.
It's so disjointed. There's
Yeah,
no flow.
it is.
Okay,
It's
now,
like,
yeah.
this
We
is
agree.
here, that's there, this is there, that's there. It's dry, you know, it's crazy.
We're trying to correct that. Okay, just to let you know, from the courts, from the jail being out there when I moved here, we have 2 Sally ports, double staffing. Costs us over $300,000 a year in prisoner transport to come to court. That will be eliminated once they go out there, because they'll just have a hallway directly from the jail to the courts.
So are you planning to keep, like, the DMV and all of that in this building?
We're trying to figure out what to do.
And probation is in another building?
Probation is
Probation will
next to
be-
courts and next to the jail and all that.
But right now, it's in a separate area.
Right now, it's here.
It's here.
Probation's
Well,
here.
There's probation here, but there's also officers that are down there past the hospital.
That's the Department of Corrections,
Okay,
that's
what's the
state.
difference?
Well, our probation officers are county, so it's, yeah, they don't manage the felony state.
Depends on the crime that you commit
Yeah.
and who you get for
But
probation.
again, it's so disjointed. There's so many
Well, that's-
areas that we're paying for that it doesn't make sense.
Well, with the new courthouse, that is one of the things that they are going to be renting, to try and keep things a little more organized, instead of having the state at one location and the county at another
What would
location.
be the point of renovating this building if all of these spaces are not necessary anymore?
Well, one of the questions we have is, we've got 170 people, employees out at the Pomida building, the Health and Human Services building. So we've got some Health and Human Services employees, like 70 or so approximately in this building, and we've got 170 out there, and that is part of the disjointed thing, because some people will go out to that location, nope, you've got to be downtown, you know, for financial services here, and so that is part of the disjointedness. So that is part of the question, you know, do we bring those 170 employees to this location?
And be full?
And be full, we'll be full right away, so that's what we're wrestling with, some big issues.
When you don't have a master plan on how you're going to do with this, the Pomida building was supposed to be like a 2-3 year stopgap. They've been there, it's close, going on 20 years now. I mean, that's not a plan. Okay, the Pomida building was not meant to house people like that. And it's a maintenance nightmare for us right now. It's costing us a lot of money just to maintain it. And if we stay there too much longer, we're going to put a buku amount of bucks
We
in.
own that?
We own it.
Yeah.
15 years.
Okay, when they were looking at a building, him and Hod, the building got sold, and they had to grab the next one because they needed space for bodies. And that's bought that, and you say, okay, this will just temporary, we're gonna take care of this problem. The source of the force was gone, so okay, leave it go. We'll let somebody else deal with it. Okay, we're trying to make it so it's like a master plan, so it actually makes some sense here. My problem I have with this building we have now is because there's so much deferred maintenance on this building. And if we bring Pomida in here, we're at 100% capacity day one after remodeling this whole thing. And I'm having a tough time spending upwards of $22 million on a building that's only gonna last 7 years. I can't build up and I can't build out. Where do I go? Do I all of a sudden, 10 years from now, after I've just spent $22 million of your money, come back and say, oh, you know, I'm sorry about what we did there. We shouldn't have done that. Now we're gonna have to spend $70 million on a building out there. I don't wanna do that.
Well, why didn't that building get bigger and we sell these things? And maybe they don't get sold, they sit here empty, and then what do we do?
You sell them. Okay, now the building, okay.
Actually, we do have people interested.
The jail and the Justice Center, that's a separate. When the jail moved out there, that was not really planned. That was a stopgap because the Department of Corrections said, fix it, rebuild, or you're gone. So they bought that land out there for the gravel for the highway department, and all of a sudden we plop the jail on there.
So, do you have any other questions?
Well, no, but
And hopefully we answered some of them to the best of our abilities.
I mean,
There's a gentleman over here in the blue that's been standing.
The white.
I don't want him to fall down.
Good evening, I'm Dwight Hammer, Albion Township. My question is, when we built the court system out there, did we compare how many courtrooms compared to what other counties in this state are building for the same amount of courtrooms? Because I seem to remember one out in western Minnesota that got built for $20 million.
How long ago?
Just this year.
And
I don't know where that one's at.
do you know what?
Swift County.
Which one?
Swift County.
Lot smaller.
Yeah.
Swift County's a lot smaller than this county.
But it's got the same amount of courtrooms.
9?
You got 9 courtrooms?
Wow, that's.
I doubt that one. I would challenge you on that one.
Dollar per square foot was at 100.
And I would challenge that one too.
Well, it's possible though. I mean, it's a different economy though in Swift County. They have a different competitive bidding market because we're more urban
But
than
it
them.
doesn't matter where you're building in this state. If you're building for $100 a square foot, the same amount of capacity should go in this building.
I'm
For
not
the
sure-
dollar.
You know, Dwight, I'm not sure where those numbers come from, $100 a square foot, but I am definitely gonna look in that, because that doesn't make a hill of beans sense, because that's not even close to the construction cost index of that type of building.
You don't need that type of building is what I'm trying to tell you.
To build a metal shed?
You can build a metal post building, and that's what they need for a courthouse. They don't need a concrete Taj Mahal. And what are these guards getting paid for transporting these prisoners if they can't handle it?
The judges aren't getting paid, we're paying for that, we have 2 Sally ports, because our courts are over here and the jail's over there.
We're paying already for transport people.
That's our
If they can't handle the job, transporting these people through the walls up here. Dave, which was one of the old guards up there, said there's more little quirks up there. He said that it was very easy, you could lose the prisoner. But it was also very easy to gain that prisoner back because it was either in one of the judges' courtrooms or in their offices. This is what, when they came to us needing this Taj Mahal, why didn't we set a bond limit with them and said, hey, fine, we'll build it, but this is what you're gonna get to spend.
Well, it did get cut back considerably to what they wanted.
But they could have cut it back a lot more.
Well, we could have, probably. But then and again, in 10 years, if we had the growth, we would have probably had to add on to it.
My point of reasoning why I'm so upset over this is I hear you guys up there talking about your property taxes. I've been in this county for 20 years.
Okay.
I've seen my property taxes increase on the average of 4 to 7% every year since I've owned it.
And before
I
you were here,
cannot write off.
What county were you at before this county?
Sherburne.
Sherburne. Go look at their tax rates, you know, they've gone up about 10% a year up there.
Actually, I've looked at my old property value up there because I know the address. Yeah, actually, it hasn't increased that much.
What did it increase?
Huh?
What did it increase?
It's increased right around 4 a year.
Valuation.
Valuation and taxes.
From what it was before. Keep in mind, we're 84th out of 87 in per capita spending. They're what, like 43rd out of 87 in per capita spending, so they're already a bunch
No,
higher.
they're at 80.
They're not in the 80s.
Yeah, they were last year.
They were.
Yeah, I think they were at 83
They're right up.
last year.
What,
83?
They're in the 80s. Whether
They are 82.
my problem with the biggest taxation that I'm seeing right now is not only did I see the county decided to take a tax increase, my health insurance took a 7% jump. What happened to all my benefits? That way.
and I bet your deductible went up through the roof too on your health insurance too. Yep.
Yep, that's one of the big factors for us, too, is, 700 and some employees with a health insurance increase. That was one of the things.
Can't necessarily keep taking and paying everybody's health insurance at a state and county level. we need to start making them pay for some of their wages when we're paying out.
We have started shifting that, some of the health plans we've had, and make it put more of the burden
High
on them.
deductible plans. Yep.
That
We've
is already
changed, we've
started.
changed our plans.
But I've also had the luxury of talking with somebody out in Washington DC this summer. They came back here to visit. He was telling me the average sheriff pay out there is $100,000 a year
Out where?
in Washington,
DC.
DC.
Average sheriff?
Average sheriff pay.
Or average police
Deputy- the
officer?
deputy or sheriff?
Sheriff.
Throughout the nation, or in just the, I guess I'm trying to
In the
understand the
state?
That's
question.
in the DC area.
I doubt
Sheriff.
that.
Right, for like the county attorney is in roughly in the same neighborhood
In Washington DC.
in Washington
Well,
DC.
DC, the District of Columbia would only have one district attorney, and they would only have one sheriff, so, I mean, they wouldn't mean,
He's talking in that general area.
okay, around the Washington DC area, those counties.
Virginia, Maryland.
Maryland, I guess, I haven't looked at comparables in the DC area, but Maryland area, I couldn't tell you what they are, but
On
maybe
that
they
salary,
are.
they're not living in DC, that's for sure.
Our problem with the board, with this equalization of wages is when you take the superintendent from St. Paul and Minneapolis and you move them out here, all the superintendents in the state, when they did that, got the same pay.
Well, that's because Minnesota allowed the ability of pay equity laws and holding government entities to have a certain level of compression and points assigned to it. I mean, I hate to say state mandates, but that was a law that they enacted years ago that basically told government that you're going to pay people so much money based on their skill level and their job and their education and their duties linear across with a certain level of compression.
What was that cost per student down there compared to out here?
But that doesn't factor into it. I know. That's.
And the same thing goes for.
Pay equity.
Well, the same thing goes for any time there's federal or state money involved in a road, we have to pay a higher rate.
That's not pay equity then to me.
That's prevailing wage.
that's
So if you take a
prevailing
state,
wage.
if you take a
Prevailing
federal or state
wage, yes.
grant, you're going to use prevailing wage. Yep.
Yeah, it's not right.
That's not right either. That just inflates the cost of the project on the taxpayer's back.
Yeah.
Because
But I deal with prevailing wage all the time. You guys don't pay what they pay in the cities.
My son-in-law is the sheriff. You never know if he's gonna come home every night. Would you want that job?
Let's put it this way.
You know? Would you? I never know if he's coming home, and my grandson's a deputy. I never know if he's coming home.
My
Would you
family's
trade
been in the
jobs?
law enforcement area for a lot of years.
all this.
And
All
I
right,
have one cousin right now, only making $45,000 a year.
let's continue here. Sir, you're the yellow, you're sitting up here.
Hello, thanks for having me tonight. My name is John Slazarchuk. I live at 6378 Marlowe Avenue in Otsego. I'm just here in opposition of the proposed 2019 budget and levy increase. Back in 2010, I lived in Rogers. We had a townhouse, and this is right at the bottom, right at the worst part of the housing market. And we sold our townhouse, lost money on it, and looked around Rogers, and there was a lot of houses there that were foreclosed on, and gorgeous houses, but we just kept getting hung up on the taxes. And it was, well, this house is $5,000, this house is $4,500 in taxes. Even if we get a good deal on the house, I can't afford the taxes. Flash forward to the proposed 2019 levy and my tax increase, and I looked at all my statements back to when we bought our house, and my taxes have gone up 55%. I bought my house for about $235,000 back in 2010. And my taxes, if this 2019 increase goes through, will be about $4,000. So I'm looking at it, I'm kind of getting to that point where I'm like, this is what I would have been paying if I would have stayed in Hennepin County. And I'm not in the metro area. I consider, I know it's a collar county, I know it's growing quickly, but it's not a metro county. But I feel like I could live in Washington County, Anoka County, Dakota County, and pay less in taxes than I am.
Dakota County, you're definitely gonna pay less in tax.
Well, and I know, I work in county government. I know that Anoka and Washington are both very cheap as well. We've been saving money to finish our basement. I'm looking at $4,000 in taxes per year now. If I finish my basement, that's going to be another $750 a year. assuming there's going to be, 4 to 7% increases ongoing, I'm going to be at $5,000 a year within 5 years. I just can't afford to pay that. So I just checked around at some of the other levy increases at some of the neighboring counties. Anoka County is at a proposed 4.94. Washington County is at 5.5. Sherburne was at 4.75. Hennepin, who's the evil empire of taxes, is at 5.5, and then Hennepin, or Wright, is proposing 17.3. I mean, you guys are almost at 4 times of any of the other counties in terms of the proposed levy increase for 2019. And they have the same state and federal mandates that you guys have.
They have paid lobbyists. Hennepin County has paid lobbyists that spend all their time down the state. If you look on the state auditor's website, you'll see what Hennepin County gets for state and federal funding that we can't even come close to. Because they spend time down there. Well, not only that, but every county commissioner in Hennepin County used to be a state legislator. They know the game.
They went there for the pay increase.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if
I don't know
I,
how it works. And that may be the case for Hennepin County, but that's not the case for every county that I mentioned.
and Mr. Chair, if I may address biggest reason that is, I mean, we really, if you look at this behind you there, I mean, we should be at like between a 6 and a 7% levy, 7.5%. Most of the stuff, if you look at what those are things that should have been addressed slowly over periods of time, and that's the reason why the debt services are pieces. If it was done properly, and if you start addressing it when it's coming down the road, and you would have taken $200,000 and started putting that money away to do these projects, you wouldn't have the increase. I mean, I'm unfortunately, my tenure here is very short at this point, and like you said, the bomb went off, and that's the reason why. I mean, you look at more than half of that dollar bill are basically things that just weren't addressed prior. Some of it wasn't addressed because of the downturn in the economy. They didn't want to impact the taxpayers in 2008 to 2010 because it was bad. So they kicked some cans, and I ain't going to harm them for that. And that during that time, there were some things before that they probably should have done, and there's some things after that that probably should have been done, but they weren't, and that's what puts us where we are today. And rightfully so, we should be in line with all of our fellow counties. I agree.
Yeah, and we, I mean, really were. We have been trying to keep the levy down, and, unfortunately, we just kept it too low. Last year, we had 7.73. Well, over 7% of that was absorbed just by our growth. So essentially, about a 0.5% increase last year. So when you have, looking at about 12 years, an average of 2.69% inflation rate, and that's including a negative inflation rate in like 2010, I think it was. It's just, we reached the point, we didn't want to reach this point, that we had to make the correction. And I mean, it's impacting everybody, all of us here, but.
Can I just ask one more question about the growth too? I mean, is the majority of the growth in the county, I would assume, is new construction? I know in
It is.
Otsego and St. Michael and Albertville, every house they're building is 400,000 plus.
Well, we had
So that is growing the tax base.
272
considerably, isn't it?
million.
274 million this last year.
Right.
But
2019's budget.
do
Right, so
understand.
we talk about growth like it's a hindrance, but that's
No,
also
no.
adding to the tax base considerably when each one of those
But now I
houses.
want to qualify that though, because we had 272 new in growth, but we had to dilute out 104 million of that because of lost capacity
Yeah.
in the nuclear power plant.
That's
So
true.
I mean, that's
That's
the thing,
true.
right now, we're losing a lot, as fast as we're going, we're losing a lot of that growth just because of a devaluation. And that's right now where we're struggling on, because as we get new growth, it requires a lot more services, and we're not getting the full amount of funding that we should get for the new services, because we're getting a diluting tax source, I guess, if we can say it.
I just have one other last, real quick thing, I'm sorry for taking so long, but at the county that I work at, I work for Anoka County. I don't know why I keep saying the county I work at, it's not a secret, but our board literally every year comes to us and says each department says we want a flat budget. They don't ever let us increase what we're asking for. And then behind the scenes, they handle, okay, these are the mandates we need to take care of, these are things we are beyond our department's control. But they work behind the scenes with human services or whichever those departments are. Everybody else, they say, okay, you got flat, If you have something you absolutely have to have that you can't do without, we'll make a special exception, or you can present that at your budget meeting. But they do come to us and say, we want 0. I mean, I've been there 12 years, I don't think once they've said, well, we'll allow you to have 6%. They always say 0. And then if there's an extreme case, you have to justify it
Okay,
to them,
John,
so.
for Anoka County, because I know the people over there pretty well. When they all got in office, they took over from the raging liberal board that used to be there. Anoka County was one of the fattest ones on that. That's where the trimming came from, and they could only trim so much at a time. But they've done a really good job about trimming that thing down. But they used to be such a bloated pig compared to everything else. And you could talk to Rhonda or Scott, any of them, they'll tell you. So when we got on board, this place was completely out of control, what they were doing. You know, they were right by the top. They thought they were Ramsey County or some damn thing. And they've been really systematically trimming it. And as they're doing this, it takes a while. You can't compress that down in 1 year. It takes over time. And they've been very good at doing that. The size of Anoka County is helping a little bit with it, but they are doing a really good job. I just want to also let you know, John, that if you've looked at McLeod County, our neighbor to the south, they held hard zeros for the past few years. You know, they were crying at the AMC, this conference this week. They're looking at a 7%, more than likely a true 7% for the next decade to catch up. Because you can't hold a hard zero because it just doesn't work.
Right.
You know, and they said that was foolish of us to do that.
Right.
And a lot of places are struggling with it. On this one here, I take more of the attitude, okay, we see our problem. It's sitting in front of us. I don't want to, cut this down to 12% and then next year come back with another 12%. I'd rather take our lumps and be done with it and make sure that we come back far less than 10% from here on in. I don't want to be in this neighborhood again, because at some point in time when my property value starts jacking, all of a sudden and the commercial, when it goes up really fast. You know, because I don't want to be in this boat either.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
There he is.
John Euchre, Albion Township. I guess I've been kind of watching this all night, and we got 5 commissioners sitting up here. Why is one don't say nothing? I think you have another plan that nobody will even listen to, won't they?
I have some different views, and I'm not supportive of moving the building here, the administration building. I understand the rest of the board's viewpoint on it. I just respectfully have a different opinion. Now, and I told this to Commissioner Potter, I said, time may tell, you might be the biggest genius that ever was, but I said, I am just a conservative at heart. I mean, I'm tightwad, I guess, whatever you want to call me.
Want to pay for part of it first before you go beyond. Ain't that kind of the plan?
I guess I tell people it's served me well in my life, you know. I mean, I was debt-free for a while, and my wife and I bought my mom's farm, so now, but we're going to be debt-free in another couple of years again, and I'm real adverse to debt, and I guess I operate from a different platform, and we just...
Well, you covered a biggest share of the county surface-wise.
Yeah.
And still, it's the rest of the county controls the show, and we pay the bill.
I mentioned this too, and I know you're a farmer too, but I represent a large agricultural area in my district, and I'm seeing them, they're quitting farming right now. I mean, they're not necessarily going broke right now, but I know a number of them just said, I'm renting the land out. I can't make money farming, so I don't know.
In this human services, how many of them are already starting to work at home and on different types?
We've got 12 out now, and the plan is to get 12 per year for 4 years, so we should have 48 telecommuting. It takes, they can't just do all 48 at once because
Well, they normally got to check in or whatever the deal is.
Yeah, and they have what's called a landing day, where they come in and they're working, so they're not home 5 days a week working, but production has gone up. Their efficiency has gone up, their production has gone up. I mean, it's been a very positive thing. Of course, you have to have the right people to be able to handle this, but yeah,
Well, that would cut down on space needed.
And exactly, and that's one of the things, and, we haven't voted to build this new building, but that's one of the things that they they're building into the plan is lesser space needed, or, they're factoring that in.
The bottom line of this increase is you've already planned to build a new building.
No.
Well, it's in their debt service, it sure is.
It's going.
You showed it to us to our township meeting.
It's going to happen, we just don't know when, John. You
No,
know.
but you've got it
Yeah.
built in, and this is why this thing went up.
Well, that's one of the reasons.
And you're trying to repay what's prior that should have been paid off.
If we took out what we have in there for that building and assumed that we didn't need any money for this building, which is what that number is in there, whether or not we do something with this building or not, or build, just planning for the future.
Right.
If we did that, it would reduce taxes on a $290,000 home by $30, was it?
35.
Derek, you made the comment before you could do this for $6,000 in this building. What was that meant about?
The what?
To get this building?
6 million, I mean, you could, I mean, a high level number, I mean, we don't we haven't totally.
One time we're talking 20 million, the next time 6, that's a
So
whole lot of.
that's if we
That's
left part of this
remodeling.
building vacant. So if we actually would say, when they move out, they go to the Justice Center, and we say we want to stay in this building and leave the whole fourth floor empty, leave all of my Pomida, leave all the courtrooms empty, we would have to spend about $5 to $6 million over the next 4 years because we have to upgrade boilers, we have some leaks, we have some chillers that need replacing, we have to redo the bathrooms to stay here that period of time because we're working on variances, because we're not ADA accessible in our bathrooms, and we've stretched out those variances as long as we could. So no matter how we do that, I mean, we have to stick some money into this building. Now, the question is, if you know you're only gonna stay here for 4 or 5 years, do you really wanna spend $6 million on a building that you're not gonna be in? That's the reason I don't know how viable that option is.
Do we own this building?
Yes, there's no bond.
Well,
on the.
Well,
The jail.
One other question,
Jail, we
okay.
don't.
You go down there to where the jail is and stuff now, and you want to build another big building out there. Where's the parking going to go next?
they've
Actually, they have
got,
it planned out pretty
They've
good.
got- yeah,
They
they-
actually have it planned out pretty
they
good.
do like 1,200 parking
151
spots.
spots.
They will not have the parking problem that we have here.
Mr. Chair, before John leaves, so I want to make sure it's in the record that John said I was being quiet.
I don't think you should be. That's the problem, you don't have enough support.
well, it's not all set in stone.
No.
Okay, good enough.
No one's ever told me that.
Out of curiosity, how many more people would like to talk? Raise the hands. Nobody?
We exhausted the list?
Oh, okay, because otherwise we're going to give Deb a break. But obviously,
She should get a little break.
You okay?
Do you want to
All
just
right.
take a couple minutes, does anyone, you want?
nope, she wants to be home.
It's nighty-night time.
All right, is there anybody else that wants to come up and talk?
No?
Anybody? Well, before you all leave, we do thank you for coming.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Appreciate.
so are we having some conversation here?
Yep.
There's nothing, we don't do nothing up here.
Well, you